While you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out.
Good evening and welcome to the August 8, 2017 Glendale City Council meeting. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members Agajanian.
Present.
Devine.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Garpetian.
Here. What's next, please?
Next is a flag salute led by Councilmember Agajanian, followed by the invocation. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. President Teddy Roosevelt was an American adventurer, politician, decorated military leader, and recipient of the Nobel Prize. He was known for his quick wit as much as for his strong leadership, and many of his sayings have entered our everyday speech as part of Americana. During a speech in Chicago in 1912, he remarked that this country will not be a permanently good place for any of us to live in unless we make it a reasonably good place for all of us to live in. President Roosevelt's words resonate throughout the decades, and we should use them as a source of inspiration even today, over a century later, as we meet this evening to deliberate and discuss the issues before this Council of the People's elected representatives. Let us pray that we are able to work together, walk in others' shoes, and understand others' perspectives on issues. Let us pray that our decisions are made with the interests of all individuals who have stake in the welfare of our city, no matter their religion, background, gender, ethnicity, place of birth, or income. Let us love each other and work to make our nation better together, for all of our benefit and not just for the few. We pray for the continued good fortune of Glendale, as always for the safety of our sons and daughters who continue to serve in military actions around the globe. Please keep them from harm and usher them home to their families swiftly. Amen.
Amen. May I please have your report?
The agenda for the August 8, 2017 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Friday, August 4, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
What's next, please?
Next is presentation and appointments. At 3A is the agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, August 15, 2017.
Ms. Beers?
Mayor Garpetian, members of the City Council for the Glendale Housing Authority, under business agenda items, we have Director of Community Development. This is the annual submission of the Section 8 Management Assessment Program, self-certification for fiscal year 16-17. For the City Council meeting to commence at 6 p.m., we have one consent item, Director of Community Services and Parks. This is the support of Meals on Wheels Loves Pets grant for the Senior Nutrition Pets for the Elderly program. We have a number of action items. Director of Public Works, this is regarding an increase for the contract capacity with Haynes Custodial Services. City Attorney, term limits for members of city boards and commissions. City Clerk, election reform. City Manager, regarding the consideration and discussion of establishing protocol for translation services at City Council meetings. Director of Community Development, bus bench locations and types. And Director of Community Development, authorizing a release of an RFP for the Space 134 Tech Consultant. And we have one item under hearing, Director of Community Development. This is an appeal of Design Review Board's approval of case number 1527952B, which is located at 1723 Sombra Drive. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And what's next, please?
Next is the Mayor's commendation to the STAR program graduates at 3B.
Okay, who's presenting it?
Hello, and thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for having us today. I'd like to introduce our new program assistant to the STAR program. Her name is Nancy Reyes, and she recently started with us about a month ago. Today I'm here to introduce 5 of our STAR graduates who have been with us. Some have been here for 4 years, some have been here a little bit longer. Our most senior, the 6 years. But before I introduce them, I would just like to thank you and thank our parks program department for helping support the program. Without the support, we would not be able to run STAR and help the students that we do help. I always like to remind everyone that the purpose of our program, for those that are not aware of the STAR program, is to create role models and to assist students and support them and encourage them to be good role models and upstanding citizens in our community. First, I would like to introduce Alex Ambriz. Please come up. Alex has been in our program for 4 years. He started in 2013, and throughout his 4 years here in our program, he's maintained a 3.0 GPA or higher. He continues to excel in his academics, and he recently graduated from Toll Middle School and received 3 different achievement awards. So we are very proud of him, and we know that Alex will continue to be a good role model and a good influence towards those that he's around. Thank you, Alex. Come here. Okay, next I would like to introduce Cesar Arista. Come on up. Cesar is actually our most senior STAR student, so he's actually been in the program as long as I have been here. We started at about the same time, so he's been with the program for 6 years, and he will be starting 9th grade at Hoover High School. During his tenure in our program, I can tell you that Cesar has shown great discipline in the fact that he's remained in our program for 6 years. And I will admit that it's not always easy being in our program. We have high expectations for all of our students. And for 6 years, Cesar has managed to, meet all those requirements that we expect of him. I am proud to say that Cesar's going to be, he's already started on the football team for Hoover High School, which shows. So he's definitely going to help them out. I'm excited about seeing that. And his future goals are to join the U.S. Marine Corps. So, congratulations, Cesar. Thank you. Come stand over here. Next, we have Daisy Hernandez. Come on up. Daisy has been with our program also for 4 years. She attends Hoover High School. And I will tell you that when Daisy started STAR, it was really hard to get her to say anything. She is very shy. And I am very happy to say that even though it was slowly, she has grown and has been able to say a little bit more than when she started. So slightly, she's improved on being able to speak in front of the students in STAR. So we're really proud of her. And I will also say Daisy is such a sweetheart, and she's always kind to those that are around her. So I know that she will continue to be a positive role model towards all those that are around her and all her peers. Thank you, Daisy. And next we have Jesse Arredondo. Jesse also started our program 4 years ago. I remember he was like this little, and he's grown a little bit. Jesse, I will say, has worked very hard to stay in our program. I'm really proud of him, and it was a very good accomplishment for him when he graduated on stage from Toll Middle School this year. We were all very proud, and I can say I speak to his mother and I've spoken to his family, and they're all very proud. They may not say it all the time, but I can tell that they're very proud of all his accomplishments, and we are as well. I can tell you that Jesse, during his tenure here, I can see that he knows the difference between right and wrong, and if faced in a difficult situation, he always stands on his 2 feet and makes the right decision. So I'm very proud of him. And I also am proud that he is looking forward to joining our Explorer program. And so one day it's possible that we might see Jesse here applying to our police department and hopefully being a police officer also. Thank you, Jesse. Lastly, we have Maria Castaneda. Come on up. Maria has also been with us for 4 years, and I will say Maria is that student who is the perfect student. She brings us her report card every quarter, and we are all in shock if we see a B, because usually she has straight A's. Her current GPA was a 4.0. We are really proud of her, and I can never find anything bad to say about Maria. I will say she started our program as a role model, so we didn't have to make her into a role model. She was already one, and she will just continue to be a role model and be a stronger person as she grows. I've always believed, and I think everyone who knows Maria knows, that she's going to succeed in whatever she chooses to do. This summer, she participated in our Teen Academy, and she graduated with everybody, so I'm really proud of her. She's the type of girl that whatever opportunity she has, she's going to take it, and she's going to make the best of it. She joined Glendale High's track and field last year, and this year she hopes to be on the softball team. So she's very well-rounded, and she, like I said, she's always up for a challenge, and I'm proud of her. I will continue to say I have no doubt that Maria will continue to pursue her education even after high school, and she will achieve whatever goals she has and whatever she sets. So congratulations, Maria. Thank you for being in our program for so long. When I asked Maria what she will remember from our STAR program, she answered the lessons that were given to us, as well as the friends that were made along the way. So lastly, just on behalf of the STAR program, I would like to thank all of you students for striving, for trying hard, and for following the rules, even though I know sometimes it was hard. You guys did an amazing job, and I'm proud of you guys, and I feel confident that we've prepared you to enter high school and be good role models towards everybody. I asked them if anybody wants the opportunity to come and speak. I told them I would give them that if that's okay. We'll see if there's any volunteers, but if that's okay with you guys.
Of course, of course.
Okay, so do we have any? Very good, Alex.
Hi, I don't only speak for myself when I say that STAR has taught us many things and that we will cherish along the way.
Thank you, Alex.
Good job.
Would anybody else like to say anything?
I would like to thank Ms. Jackson for always being there when I needed her in the tough times. She's been helping me a lot, and that's something I'll never forget.
Thanks.
That's nice.
Anybody else? Before your chance is gone? No? Okay. And lastly, I would just like to tell the students that our Glendale Police Officers Association actually donated $50. So they're each going to be getting a $50 gift card to spend for their school supplies. So
nice.
Congratulations, and thank you to our GPOA also.
Don't go away. Don't go away. Well, we have Mayor's commendation for all of you. First of all, we are very proud of all of you. I'm very well familiar with the STARS program. Glendale Association of Realtors is a big supporter of the STARS program. And what I like about it is exactly what you see here today. They bring these different kids from different backgrounds and different strengths and teach them discipline and teach them how to use their strengths. Like Daisy was shy, but she's here today standing in front of the city council and live TV. Jesse accomplished so much, and he wants to be an explorer. Maria, perfect student, made many friends. Alex started early, and it's not easy. I know it's not easy to stick by this program. And finally, Caesar, who's a senior member of STAR program, and he looks like a leader today. I mean, the way you dress, I'm very impressed by. I'm telling you. So we have, and you don't just look like a leader; you are a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Mayor's commendation for all of you. I'm going to read one, and they all say the same thing. In recognition of your graduation from the Students Training as Role Models STAR Youth Program, your involvement is a testament to your values and commitment in achieving your goals. I commend your hard work, passion, and dedication in accomplishing this successful program. On behalf of the City of Glendale, I applaud your efforts and wish you continued success in life. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to help me. Mr. Anjurian, if you don't mind. We all go down there. And we have one member that is absent today, I believe, or no?
Got it? So if you guys want.
Okay, what's next on the agenda, please?
Next on the agenda is a consent item including minutes. If I may, also you have a housing authority meeting that
Yes.
you should adjourn.
So before we go to consent items,
Okay.
Councilmember Devine.
Housing Authority was in closed session, so now in recess. So I'd like to have a motion for adjournment,
So
Move
moved.
to second?
and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Consent items, are we okay with it? Are we? My colleagues okay?
I would like, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item 4B.
4B,
Yes, sir.
are you moving the rest of the
I will
consent
move the
items?
rest of the consent calendar.
Second?
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, it was moved by,
Me.
thank you. Councilmember Zagajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you read 4B?
4B is Director of Public Works regarding Glendale Sub-Regional Traffic Management Center. B1 is a resolution authorizing city manager or his designee to execute a funding agreement and project readiness certificate with the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority Metro for receiving Proposition C discretionary funds to implement the Glendale Sub-Regional Traffic Management Center project.
Mr. Sinanian?
Just want an explanation of what this is. Anything that relates to transportation is, I think, very important for this council and is a priority issue. So let's hear it.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Member City Council, Council Member Sinanian. This Glendale Transportation Management Center, Traffic Management Center, is going to be housed in the MSB building in the engineering offices. It's essentially a tool that we use technology to remotely do the signal timing work on our traffic signals, as well as intelligent transportation system software that we can use to communicate through fiber with our regional neighbors, our agencies such as Metro, City of Los Angeles, City of Burbank, in an effort to be able to coordinate and create an increase in mobility where the arterials are connected between these cities and agencies, as well as reduce congestion and traffic management tool.
Okay. So this, we are, by approving this item, we are authorizing the execution of this agreement with the Metro to receive the funds to implement this program.
Yes, Councilmember Sinanian, that's absolutely correct, and we have a matching fund that was appropriated as part of the last year budget.
Okay. Very well. If my colleagues don't have any questions.
I have a question. Is this the system that we use to synchronize our traffic lights?
Synchronization, Councilmember Devine, synchronization of the system, traffic signal system, is one of the functions of this operation, yes.
But this is more than that, right? It's
It is.
synchronization also with neighboring cities,
Exactly.
the traffic flow and all
And
that.
traffic accident monitoring by our police department and traffic flow management.
Okay. So I'll move the item.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Zagajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is City Council and staff comments.
Okay, I think we had, Mr. Sinanian, you had a...
I do have an item. As I think I don't know if we've spoken about this, but during our transportation summits or those meetings that have had a transportation element to it, we've talked about Eco Rapid Transit. It's a JPA that The city of Glendale is a part of, it consists of two constituent parts. The southern portion of it is called the West Santa Ana branch, which is part of Measure M, and then the northern portion, which runs from Union Station to Glendale to Burbank Airport, has two members, one of them being the city of Glendale, the second is the Burbank Airport. And I currently serve as the chairperson of Eco Rapid Transit Orange Line JPA, and with the appointment of a new airport commissioner to the Hollywood Burbank Airport Authority, that being Councilmember Devine, we had the opportunity to appoint a new member to the Orange Line, the Eco Rapid Transit. And since Glendale is so important to that project, as we are the only municipality in the northern portion of that project, we wanted to make sure that we have actually two current council members who serve on Eco Rapid Transit. And fortunately, our colleagues on the Airport Authority understand that, and they were willing to cooperate. And this is what transpired yesterday. Since I'm the chairman of the authority and couldn't technically resign from the Glendale position before I get appointed by the airport position, thereby opening it to another member on the Glendale City Council, I was elected by the airport authority, nominated by my colleagues and approved by the authority. So now currently I'm in a strange situation of serving as the representative both from Glendale City Council and Burbank Airport. That was done again so that I don't lose the, I don't get kicked out of the chairmanship by default. What I'm going to do now is resign my Glendale position with the Eco Rapid Transit and nominate Councilmember Agajanian to that position. And I just want to point out that both of his colleagues, the other two colleagues that serve on the Burbank Airport Authority, wanted to make sure that Mr. Agajanian had a good commission position so he could be active on regional projects, and voluntarily did not nominate themselves for that position so that it would be open to you, Mr. Agajanian. So if I don't know if can we hold the election now, or does it have to be itemized? Does it have to be agendized?
It has to be agendized for next week.
He needs a second on that?
It's a nomination, so it doesn't need a second, but somebody can second it if they want.
We offer an alternative.
And yes, you can, or we can all decide on an alternate as well.
We can nominate Vartan Garapetian as alternate.
Yeah, because I was Mr. Sinani as alternate.
Yes, indeed. So I guess we move on to the next item. I have one more comment, Mr. Mayor, if I may, since I'm at it.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Last Tuesday, we had National Night Out, which was once again a very successful series of community events. The weather was a little uncooperative. It felt like we were in New York or D.C. in the summertime. It was very humid, very, very strangely humid. So the attendance was somewhat impacted. I think it was lower than we've sort of gotten used to. But nevertheless, it was very successful. Promotes sort of community sense and community feeling amongst our residents, and gave us an opportunity. I think all of us went from event to event in different parts of our great city, checking out what's going on, what the neighborhoods, how each neighborhood is commemorating, or how each neighborhood is spending their National Night Out. So thank you for all of our residents for coming out, and thanks to our city departments to the extent that they helped out and participated and coordinated these efforts. And of course, thank you to our Glendale Police Department for getting us around the city to multiple events in a safe and timely manner. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Devine.
Yes. I echo the words of Councilmember Sinanian. It was rather muggy evening, but it was still fun. I managed to get to six neighborhoods, 2 of which had never had a council member there, so it was kind of fun to meet, and it always is, to meet our residents and enjoy that particular night out. And there were people from other communities that were taking part in the events around the city, and they were saying how wonderful it was because they don't have that. They don't have a national night out in their city. So I was proud to be a part of that, and also want to thank the fire department for being out and about, as well as the police department. I have 2 announcements which deal with the Montrose area of Glendale. They have some upcoming events that I think you might be interested in. I'm sorry that the STAR program youth left, but on August 18th and 19th, they're going to be having the Montrose Film Festival. And the locations are in the parking lot at the Anderson's Pet Store and Montrose Travel. Sure to be fun. Cartoons will begin at 8:05. And you can take a picnic, bring your chairs and to sit in the parking lots and watch some great movies that they have offered for the kids. The second event is to save the date, and it will be on November the 4th, and that will be their Montrose Wine Walk. They had that event this past year, and it was a huge success. So you want to put that on your calendar because it's sold out. They had more people than they ever expected. So this year it's going to be even better than last year. They have actually several new locations that are going to be participating. So remember the date, put it on your calendars. That's November the 4th. The third item that I want to speak about, and this was kind of, to me, it was had some shocking statistics in it, and that I want to share with the community. On Friday, August the 4th, the Traffic Bureau conducted a directive enforcement on that evening. 3 officers wrote 42 citations and made 3 arrests for reckless driving. 1 arrest for suspended license, 4 30-day impounds. Citations broke down, 10 citations for no license plates, 7 citations for speeding. 1 was going 75 miles per hour on Glen Oaks. The citations, there were 2 citations for exhaust emissions modifications. Those, I guess, are the cars that make all of the noise, and they have the modifications. 3 citations of pedestrians, 3 citations for distracted driving, cell phones, 2 citations for tinted windows, 1 for reckless U-turn, 1 for citation for impeding traffic, and 2 citations for expired registration, and finally 1 citation for driving without lights. When I read this, I was totally shocked that in one evening this many citations could be written in one spot. As I understand it, is Deputy Chief Provolitis here? I have a couple of questions about this directive enforcement, if I may. Are we going to see more of this, and what would it take to enact this directive enforcement on a regular basis?
Councilmember Devine, Carl Pavlitis, Deputy Police Chief. Actually, what you're seeing here is a continuation of an ongoing process that we actually have been doing for over the past year. We have worked on a process with our Traffic Bureau where we are regularly analyzing our traffic collision data, the complaints that we get, and then directing our officers to do enforcement in those particular areas where we have the issues and for those violations that tend to cause traffic collisions. Some of this, as you all are well aware because you've approved the acceptance of Office of Traffic Safety grants, is grant-funded directed enforcement, which this was one of those operations. So not only will you continue to see more of it, you have seen it over the past. The one thing that we have added over the past year also is we're very open about the fact that we're doing this directed enforcement. We put out the fact that we're doing directed enforcement on all our social media platforms, and then we will follow back up on with the social media platform, letting people know what the results of that enforcement activity was.
And that's one of my questions. Is there a particular reason why you give advance notice of this enforcement?
I guess in one sense people would say that's somewhat counterintuitive because you want to catch them. Well, if you really look at this, what we're really trying to do is improve the safety for the drivers and pedestrians in Glendale. So we want you to know that we're out there enforcing the operation. And if somebody actually reads that and decides that they will not speed in that particular area, that they will pay extra attention to pedestrians, that they pay extra attention to their driving, then that's an accident that didn't happen or an unsafe condition that doesn't exist. And so, as you can tell from the numbers that you just read, not everybody has gotten that message. And for those, we continue to do the traffic enforcement. But what we really want is the message out and people be careful in their driving.
Now, this is grant funded, correct? Do you do this every weekend, every night, 3 times a week?
The grant-funded ones will depend on the number of operations that are funded by the Office of Traffic Safety. But even though what you're looking here is as a grant-funded, this is a philosophy that's been ingrained in the Traffic Bureau. And so even during the day, what we've done is we've looked at the city and we direct our officers and ask them to work in particular areas. So, you'll get the highlights like this, but don't misunderstand. This is not the only thing that we do this type of thing for. Even our daily activities, if you will, for our normal deployments are directed.
Right. Well, my feeling is that, we're educating the public on as far as pedestrian safety and cycling safety. We're trying to reach our drivers. It seems that after seeing these statistics that we've reached a point where enforcement is something that we're going to have to beef up to get our drivers, in the people in our cars to pay attention. Let's get tough with them, let's say. When you say on a regular basis, how often are you?
Literally the directed enforcement activities where we're analyzing the data and then asking our officers to go to particular areas to work, that's daily.
Daily.
So there's directed enforcement efforts that are daily, and so we'll continually reanalyze the data, and as we see an impact in a particular area or a change in the trends, then we'll move.
Well, I know when I was campaigning and walking the streets, Chevy Chase Canyon had a huge problem there of speeding. And I'm wondering, is there any, what would it take to put this directive enforcement in the canyon on a regular basis for a certain amount of time until people get the message that, we're not going to tolerate this anymore?
I'd have to go back and look at our records, but we do, as I said, we move it around. We do move it around the city, including the canyon areas. So we will make an effort to rotate that enforcement into the canyons and into other areas of the city.
I think this is one of the issues that we can maybe bring back a report.
Yes, well, I was going to ask.
One of the extra meetings that we have to have a complete and comprehensive report.
Right. I would. That's what I was going to ask for, is a staff report on how often these occur. What would it take to actually put this enforcement, this directive enforcement, in a location for more than one day, in like 2 weeks, let's say? I'm figuring on, if you're doing this on a rotation basis, what would it take to implement this directive enforcement to the degree where we begin to see a change in our driving habits? Because so far I don't know that we've seen that.
I mean, we're certainly happy to bring back more information, but again, with the daily operations, it doesn't necessarily move day to day. It's analyzed day to day, but then we move it and we'll hit an area for a period of time until we start to see a change. And then as we monitor other data and see a change in another part of the city, then we'll adjust our enforcement activity appropriately.
Okay. All right. So you will bring back a report. There was a second on that for the report on.
Sure. I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
I have a few items. As you know, and as if you probably remember, 2 weeks ago I expressed my strong opposition to the appointment of Roland Kadikian to the Glendale Water and Power Commission. During that discussion, I indicated that I did have a letter from the FPPC, the State Fair Political Practices Commission. I know some of my colleagues have requested a copy of such, and I do have copies for you all, if you can pass that down. And you can see clearly that it involves the Glendale Coalition. At some point, there was a denial by the Glendale Coalition that they received this letter, and as you can see on the official letter at the bottom, it indicates that the Glendale Coalition for Better Government was notified by email. And perhaps I went over some of the things a little too quickly, but I'm just going to briefly hit the highlights and move on, perhaps to an apology to someone on the dais. First slide, please. So this is the rules governing campaigns, and this is the reason we have rules governing campaigns in California. And it says the people enact this title to accomplish the following purposes: that the receipts and expenditures in election campaigns should be fully and truthfully disclosed in order that the voters may be fully informed and improper practices may be inhibited. That's the basic crux of the entire discussion. Now let's move on to the next one, please. This is Government Code 84213. It involves the verification of the campaign statements. And it says that a candidate must, there's two choices here. If you're a candidate running in an election, you fill out the form and you acknowledge and sign that to the best of your knowledge, the treasurer of the committee used all reasonable diligence in the preparation of the committee statement. And each and every one of you know what I'm talking about because you've run for council and you or your treasurer has signed these. Now, if you're not a candidate and if you're an independent expenditure or a group that receives money from other sources but's going against a particular candidate, the person who controls the committee shall sign a verification on a report form prescribed by the commission. And it must state, it must be signed under the penalty of perjury, that I have not received any unreported contributions or reimbursements to make these independent expenditures. Here's something interesting. I have not coordinated any expenditure made during this reporting period with the candidate or the opponent of the candidate who is the subject of the expenditure. So my complaint was that Mr. Kadikian and the Glendale Coalition signed no such verification. They signed no such document indicating where their money came from and where it came from. And they certainly didn't swear under oath that they didn't coordinate that campaign activity with the candidates they were supporting or the person who was opposing me, the person they were going up against. So that's very critical. Let's move to 81004. Again, it states that if it's an independent expenditure, if it's a committee as an independent expenditure, the report shall be signed and verified by a responsible officer. And every person who signs and verifies any report must do so under the penalty of perjury. Let's go to 84510, Government Code. So there's penalties if you've failed to perform any of these acts. But there's also penalties for a different group of people. And that says that these remedies shall also apply to any person who purposely causes any other person to violate any provision of this article or who aids and abets any other person in a violation. And that could mean coordinating campaign activity. And I was very upset with the city manager. I was very upset with the city attorney when I pointed these defects out to him, that they were on their face. These filings were not made. They shrugged their shoulders and said, oh, that's not my job to do this. I don't have to do this. And you know what? Even though I growled at you, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. City Manager, I offer you an apology. Because I found out whose job it is. Section 8.10.10, the last one. It says, with respect to statements filed with him pursuant to this title, the filing officer in this case is the city clerk, shall, not may, not should, shall, determine whether required documents have been filed, and if so, whether they conform on their face with the requirements of this title. And here's the action item. Report apparent violations of this title to the appropriate agencies. So, Mr. City Clerk, I know you got a lot of work on your table, but I'm going to request that you follow the law of Government Code 8.10.10 and report these obvious violations to the FPPC and the Los Angeles County District Attorney Public Integrity Unit. You hold those documents as the filing officer, and on its face, you know that this group did not file a statement of organization. They did not file their forms. You don't have to do a lot of research, but that's clear. And I ask you that if you are in any way intimidated or dissuaded from following your duties, that you please let us know. I also ask that you go to the last election involving Measure N, which somehow escaped all of our knowledge. We have the same violations for the Measure N campaign, the last cycle of municipal campaigns. So I'm asking you that you make those reports.
Councilmember Najarian, I can assure you
I'm not done yet, sir. I ask you that you do those reports. It's a 4-year statute of limitations, and I expect this item to be included in your report on the election issues that are coming next week. And if we have to push this back to include this, you should.
I can assure you, Councilmember Najarian, that there is no intimidation factor here. As an official like yourself who answers only to the electorate to whom they are responsible, there is no one that can intimidate me nor you. We do have filings from the coalition, as we do ensure that we have filings. And as you are aware, as every person who sits on the dais next to you is aware, July 31st was a deadline for the filing of the 460 forms, which cover a period of fundraising from that covers a period from leading through June 30th. For those who are running for office, it's the last filing period. We send out notices, we make sure that people file them, and we send out email reminders as well. We will look at what was filed. We will make sure that it comports to the law. And if there's anything that does not, in conference with our city attorney, we will bring it to the attention to the authorities that will need to look at it.
As well as the Measure N campaign, which was, what year was that, 2014?
We will look back at that as well per your request.
2015. Did you know that these duties, that the government code imposed these duties? Because it's not in our state, it's not in our city charter or our ordinances of the municipal code.
I will say this, that the term filing official sometimes is a ambiguous term, because if a committee has activities at a state level, the filing official can be the Secretary of State, and they file only with the city clerk as a courtesy. It really depends on where their activities reside.
I understand that.
And it could also,
and I would assert that that's not the case.
With the school candidates, with the college board candidates, they only file with us as a courtesy. Their primary filing official, as is stated in this filing officer in section 81010 that you pointed out, would be the county. We only get a courtesy copy. But to someone unaware, they may assume it's us because it's a Glendale.
When I
official.
file a Form 60, I send it to you.
I am your primary filing.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about, Mr. Kasakian. I've researched this, believe me. And I've gone tete-a-tete with the city attorney, and I've been on the phone to the FPPC, and I've almost become an expert in this. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I owe an apology to the city attorney because I was wrong, and I thought it was his duty to report that. But sure enough, there's our answer. So I look forward to a expeditious execution of your duties according to the Government Code 81010. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have.
Mr. Siranian? I'll merely state that there was something about Mr. Najarian's statement that if they cooperate, or this group cooperates with the candidates that they do support against the candidate that they don't support. I'll just mention that the coalition did endorse me, but there was absolutely zero coordination, cooperation, or anything of that nature between my campaign and the group involved. So, just for the record.
Okay.
Can I,
Councilmember Agajanian.
I was planning to talk about something else, but since this letter Mr. Najarian just gave us a copy of, and the viewers, they may not know what this is. First I read, we were discussing this issue on July 25th, and this letter is May 5th, 2017, 3 months before we were discussing. And I don't want to read what it says, but it says in conclusion, however, please be advised, and it's not clear to whom this has been written because it's covered. I don't know whom this has been written, maybe written to somebody else, because it's not saying whom this letter is directed to. However, please be advised that at this time we have not made any determination about the validity of the allegation or allegations you have made, or about the culpability, if any, of the person or persons you identify in your complaint. So what this letter means, I mean, this means nothing. This is very long time ago, and viewers, they may think there is this FPPC, but this has nothing to do with the issue that we discussed or we have done. And the name is covered, so it's not directed to whom this is directed. So it doesn't make sense. This letter doesn't make sense. But however, I just want to go ahead and do what I wanted to say. And I want to first thank my colleagues for trust they extended to me and nominated me for to be a commissioner on Eco Rapid Transit. Thank you. The second, I want to nominate for DRB, if I can do now, Dr. Arine Arzumanian, who is an engineer, lady engineer, which is rare, but however, she's an engineer and she's teaching in Pasadena Community College for DRB. The third, I want to thank Officer Javier Michel, who last week I visited 5 different places, who took me to different places. It would be harder for me to find where I'm going, so he was very familiar with the streets, so thank you, officer. And I visited 5 different places, and I'm very glad that some of them, they had food, so I can promise them that next year I'm gonna go back to those places who offered food, so I'm their customer. And now to a more important issue which I want to discuss. City of Glendale has contract with Americana, and this is going for a long time. And it was mentioned at the time that City of Glendale and Crusoe affiliates, they are partners. So I want to know how much money all these years we have received as being a partner. So you can give me the information next week. So how much we got, how much money we got. And we know Americana is very successful business venture, so I want to see what we have received. And I want to know during these years how much we have spent to maintain the park, because it was such that the park we had to maintain. So I want to see how much money we spend every year and to maintain the park. And I want to know the size of the park in the contract and the size of the park now. Is it the same size or it's different? Because people are complaining that there was like playground and it's not there. So these are the questions I have. If somebody will help me to get this information, one of my colleagues.
Is the task understandable to staff?
Yes, sir. We have all that information.
Okay.
So.
Does he
We don't need a
this?
second. We can just get it through a public records request. So we have all that information.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Mr. Agjani?
For now.
All right, I'm going to be brief. I had a great tour of Verdugo Job Center. I want to thank Judith Velasco and the rest of the staff over there. They're doing a tremendous job. They had few job fairs, organized few job fairs, which was very successful. And next one is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in September or October. I encourage everyone to participate because they really can. Their job placement is enormous. They're doing a great job on that. National Night Out was a great success. I want to thank Officer Joe Allen for taking us around, and the fire department and police department who were always there for our community to make a safe environment for our community to come together and know their neighbors. On a lighter note, trying to put together a benefit concert. A few of the singers, well-known singers in town, talented singers in town, they came together. They want to organize a concert to benefit the local nonprofits such as STAR programs and GYA and what have you. And I want to ask the staff to look into it and see how can we help them out to organize a beneficial concert that will benefit our nonprofit organizations in town. With that, I'm done as well. What's the next on the agenda, please?
Next is a community event announcements, 3-minute portion, followed by 3-minute general public comment. This is a portion reserved for individuals who wish to speak for, relegate their comments to just 3 minutes in their whole comment period, foregoing their 5-minute comments.
Okay, I have Jess Castillo. Jess or Vess? Vess Castillo, I'm sorry. Looks like a J.
All good. Thank you for your time today. I'm Jessica Steele. I'm the Special Events Manager with Glendale Arts, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Open Arts and Music Festival. So just to give you a quick overview, it's a free annual event. We're actually just over a month away. We're super close. We're really excited, but it's a family-friendly festival that's happening on Saturday, September 16th from 2 to 10 p.m. right on Brand Boulevard in the heart of downtown Glendale in front of the Alex Theater. And this festival is definitely new to the city, but what we look to do with each year is to highlight our emerging artists as well as featuring our local businesses in the greater Glendale area and especially in our home base, which is the downtown. And so this year's festival is presented by Glendale Arts and the Downtown Glendale Association. This year we will offer live music performances from 2 to 10 p.m. and we're announcing talent this week, so if you're not already following us on social media or our website, newsletter, make sure to get on that. And we are revamping our kids area. Last year we got a lot of feedback from families about how can we make it better. And so this year we're having a dome garden, which will have interactive art installations by Yonis, which is an art collective. We'll have free face painting by the EI School of Professional Makeup. We'll have a rock climbing wall by Parks and Recreation. We'll have an instrument petting zoo by the Brand Library and Arts Center, nursing and changing stations, and a toddler supervised play area provided by Collab and Play, so families are most definitely welcome and cared for. And we'll also have some life-size games.
This year, we are not inviting outside food vendors, and instead we're really redirecting all of our foot traffic to the restaurants that are already there. So we're partnering with all the restaurants on Brand Boulevard to make sure that they're supported, and they will be our primary food vendors for the day. We're also having an arts market with free artist-led workshops. We just sent out our confirmation emails, and we're looking to announce hopefully within the next 2 weeks. We'll also have a craft beer garden inside the Alex Theater forecourt. And our confirmed breweries at this present moment are Brewyard Beer Company, Glendale's very own, Pacific Plate, who just moved into Glendale, McLeod Ales, who are San Fernando Valley based, and Eagle Rock Brewery, our neighbors. We're also offering community resources such as a free bike valet, courtesy of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. And we're creating a community resource booth, where attendees can find information on local social, health, and public service organizations. And so we welcome you. If you have any suggestions to who to include in this booth, you're welcome to contact me directly. Some other things that I would like to note is that we have partnered with Goodwill to offer a $1 record bin curated by Dub Lab Radio. So we're here today just because we wanted to make sure you have it on your calendar, Saturday, September 16th. We are looking for volunteer support. If I could just wrap this up, I would appreciate it. We are looking for volunteer support, and so if you're interested, if you know anyone who may be, our email is info@openartsmusic.com. And then we are having a public meeting Tuesday, August 22nd at 6:30 p.m. at the Alex Theater, and it's open to the public, so anyone who wants to share their thoughts, considerations, we're more than happy to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Fran Buchanan. Followed by Mike Mohill.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, city staff, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Fran Buchanan. This is my third appearance on this same matter. In 2002, Brand Boulevard had a lot of vacancies and vagrancy, and they created a CBD district, which was going to steam clean the sidewalks every month and steam clean the alleys and pick up all the trash and do all the things that would help to make it nice so that people would rent. And there were little mom and pop dry goods stores there. And now there are 6 takeout and eat in restaurants. And on a monthly basis, hundreds of buckets of used grease come out of all these places because they all deep fry like crazy. And in 2007, this was supposed to end because it was occupied and we didn't need to clean up these streets and sidewalks, and we didn't have trash in the doorways. But these restaurants are very dirty. And they have a lot of grease. And you said in 2002 that you would steam clean the alleys once a month and steam clean the sidewalks once a month. And then when you rolled it over, the Merchants District was notified, but none of the people who owned the properties contiguous across the alley were notified. So we couldn't organize and we couldn't fight it. And it was rolled over, and it's doing nothing that it was supposed to do in the beginning. It's hosting out-of-town guests and organizing a community ambassador program and doing special events, and they do graffiti removal, and they do clean the sidewalks quarterly, but they gave up on the alleys. And Hot Wings dumped 70 pounds of hot wings in my garden. And nobody discovered it until it stunk, and we had to get the people in the moon suits to remove it because nobody would touch it. And I got a letter from Jennifer McLean saying that we're going to steam clean the alley. Well, the alley didn't get steam cleaned on the 17th of July. That's how it looks right now. It's filthy, and this is grease, and this is what all the roaches come at night to feed upon. You have got to go back to cleaning the alleys And if you're going to tax us $2,000 a year, we ought to get our monthly steam cleaning. You ought to follow through. You don't follow through. You haven't cited hot wings. You just don't follow through.
Yeah.
When you said rolled it over, what do you mean? Rolled it over from who to who?
It was originally to be for 5 years in 2002. And in the 5 years, they steam cleaned every month, and they cleaned up the sidewalks, and they did the trash removal, so all of the businesses got rented. But instead of being dry goods stores, they're all food. 6 restaurants are across the alley from our apartment building.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Yes, before you leave, Councilmember Devine.
Well, I just wanted to know that this is her third time coming back, and is there an explanation of why this has not been addressed, or how can we address it? What would be the best solution?
Jennifer I have a letter here from Jennifer saying it was done, but it isn't.
Okay.
So does Jennifer have a...
And it should be monthly because it's messy.
If you please allow our city manager to answer it. So,
the folks at DGA, it's a self-assessment. Property owners vote to assess themselves. Jennifer is our liaison to DGA. She's right here. I'm sure as she's played some phone tag with Ms. Buchanan, they can figure it out because really it shouldn't be that difficult. And I think DGA wants to rectify the problem, but I would encourage her to work directly with Jen as she is our link to the Downtown Glendale Association.
So it's actually the
Yes,
association.
It's not the city.
The merchants get contacted, and the merchants get all the benefit, and we don't get any.
thank you, Ms. Buchanan. I think Jennifer will address the issue with you later.
It sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like she should be going to the association.
Yes, and arguably she might not even want to, or when they vote again, the property owners vote, maybe she should be carved out of the Downtown Glendale Association, but that still wouldn't absolve them from some of the cleanup. So making sure that there is good, adequate cleanup is still a part of what DGA needs to do. And to my knowledge, they have been working diligently on it, but obviously there is still some disconnect there.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mohil, your turn.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. According to the Glendale City Council agenda earlier this afternoon, behind closed doors, the discussion was about selling our historic Glendale Civic Auditorium plus parking lots 30, 31, and 32 to Glendale Community College. The city and the community college have been in negotiation since June 2014. According to the college report, the selling of the 3 parking lots will enable the college to expand. The expansion will create additional 3,800 cars traversing the streets of Mountain, Ethel, and Verdugo Road 5 days a week between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. This will ruin the residential neighborhoods of Rossmore and Royal Canyon neighborhoods. Our unfunded retirement pension obligations to CalPERS employees is reaching $2 billion. Led by Councilman Nigerian, who has been endorsed and received thousands of dollars from our police officers and firefighters union. He, again, is for selling city assets to pay the unsustainable, outrageous salaries and retirement pension benefit of our CalPERS union workforce. Councilman Nigerian knows the first obligation for the city is to pay our union workforce. This is before fixing roads and expanding needed parks. Where is Mr. Nigerian going to find the money to continue paying for his best employees that money can buy? To pay this continuing blackmailers, CalPERS, the city will have to cut more city services, raise fees, and create fees, plus increase taxes, or sell historic assets like the Civic Auditorium and plus the parking lots, Alex Theater, Rock Haven Sanitarium, and municipal parking structures. Taking no responsibility under Mr. Nigerian's leadership, and after nearly bankruptcy GWP, he will want to sell GWP. Councilman Nigerian will then blame the Glendale Coalition for a Better Government for all the ills of the city. Recently, when Glendale Community College was promoting selling the $325 million bond to the public, they never told the voters that the bond money would go to pay the city of Glendale millions of dollars for the purchase of Glendale Civic Auditorium parking lots 30, 31, and 32. Councilman Najarian, City Manager Ochoa, police officers, and firefighters union bosses, plus the college president and board, have all fooled the sleeping public. The public will be using taxpayers' money to buy the Civic Auditorium and parking lots. Then the city will receive millions of dollars to enable them to stay with the current and corrupt, irresponsible blackmailers, CalPERS. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohan.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Najarian.
Fool us 3 times. Get the facts straight, Mr. Moho. You don't know what my position is on this matter. It was a closed session item, and I'm not at liberty to discuss what my position was. But suffice to say, you're grasping at straws. You're slandering our fine public safety officers, men and women, as well as the city manager. Who else did he hit? Did he hit you too? Actually, there's something in the newspaper about this past Sunday about the near impossibility to leave the CalPERS program. The small city of Loyalton is in quite a jam, and they analyzed getting out of CalPERS, and it's just an impossibility. And many of the other cities that they interviewed said, we just can't do it. They have us basically in a no-win situation, which is what we were presented with over a year ago. The opinion of the city manager and the finance director is that getting out of PERS is an obligation that's just too steep for any municipality to handle.
Except that you're finding a way through it, as most cities are, and doing it in a way that is not detrimental to services when you look at the deliverables that you report on a quarterly basis. So,
okay, thank you. What's next on the agenda, please?
On the agenda at 8A under action item is the Directors of Public Works and Community Development regarding award of contract for design and construction services for the Beeline Maintenance Facility Project. 1A is a resolution adopting final mitigated negative declaration prepared for the Beeline Maintenance Facility Project. 2A is a resolution of appropriation for FTA CMAQ grant funds.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa.
And 3 is a motion, 2 is a resolution of appropriation, and 3 is a motion awarding a design-build contract for design and construction of the Glendale Beeline Maintenance Facility to Dorado Design and Construction for $14,100,000 plus a 15% design and construction contingency, $2,115,000 for a total not to exceed amount of $16,215,000.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, ma'am. What you have here is $16 million worth of neglect for your infrastructure. To the extent that you have a Beeline bus facility that has come before you twice, that you have set monies aside in both Prop C as well as from our reimbursed CIP program. You did an RFP that resulted in a contract that was being recommended as part of a design build, as I say, where we would bring on a design builder in an effort to take what is a complex construction and make sure that we are able to bring it in on budget. Yet still, because of the dynamics in the market, it was just a little beyond our reach. So earlier this year, you directed the Director of Public Works, Mr. Galanian, and his team to negotiate with the apparent low bidder and bring that cost down. And in looking at a means of filling the gap, because we didn't want to overvalue engineer the site, because we want to make sure it is indeed something that is useful for upcoming generations, we looked at to reprogram dollars, the first mile, last mile grant monies that the city had received that was funding a small portion of this project. To the city's benefit, and certainly to the credit of Mr. Najarian through his role at Metro, we were able to secure a CMAQ grant that has to do with air quality mitigation and improvement, and in doing so, that will effectively fund the gap for this overall project. So The project that you have seen in the past is a project that we are bringing forward to you pursuant to the direction you gave to the Director of Public Works. An important part of the actions before you are the mitigated negative declaration for the environmental review. The project was sent to the state clearinghouse. We received comment letters from different folks. The mitigation really comes in the way of monitoring as we do some of the excavation and some of the construction work that'll take place to ensure that we, if we do run across any artifacts or anything that relates back to Native American tribes, that those are preserved, protected, and taken into account with respect. At this point, what we are asking is for you to approve the MND, the final MND, to appropriate the FTE grant that was the FTA grant that was secured by Councilman Najarian, and to award the design-build contract to the good folks here at Dorado Design. If you have any specific questions about the project, Mr. Galanian or his team can address those.
Any questions?
Yes.
Mr. Agajanian.
I don't have problem with the item, but I have problem the way every time this comes in front of us, and this is the issue of we are putting something, it says here an invitation for bid was issued, and then this is $14 million project, and then with the reserve it comes to $16 million, and there's only two companies that come forward. That is something I did this before in my other life, and I'm surprised that there are two companies. And then it's not like competition among the two. One bid, it says $14,837,000, and the other one is $21,500,000. I mean, I can't believe how this can happen. First, for such a big project, we don't have more people to compete. The second is, so they are far apart. Every time there is some sort of bid, there is only one person or two person, and the bids are so apart that I just have problem with that, not with this matter.
Mr. Gulanian?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, Member City Council, Councilman Agajanian, very good points. Appreciate the questions. Just as a way of background, last year we actually issued an invitation to 30 design-build companies that are engaged in design-build contracting work to submit their qualifications so that we could pre-qualify them before we solicit bids. Of those 30 companies, only 4 companies not bidding but submitted their qualification, their financial background, their history, their experience with similar projects. And we pre-qualified all 4 of them.
Mr. Golanya, if I can interrupt, why only 4 responded?
Councilmember Sinanian, I believe, and this has been a recent history, as you have noted, both council members have noted, it's a hot construction market. The construction companies now have choices, more choices than before. Actually, one of the companies that didn't submit a bid said that they just have too much work and they don't have capacity to take on another project of this size and magnitude. And this isn't unique to City of Glendale. My counterparts in other cities are facing the same dilemma, same challenges. There are not as many bidders as we used to see back in 2007, 2008, and up until we came out of recession. It's a hot construction market. That's all I can say. And one of the other companies that didn't bid indicated that although they were pre-qualified, they had submitted their qualification package, they just weren't interested anymore. So that proves to us, to me, that they're just being picky. They can pick and choose what projects to bid on. And so we were left with two bidders. One of the bidders with the higher bid, Kemp Construction, was already engaged in a multi-million-dollar, one of our own projects at Central Library. So they were busy working on it. So they bidded high, number one. Number two, in conversations with them, this is a design-build project, so we went out to bid with only 30% design. So the scope of work may not have been as clear to these companies, and they bid it as they saw it. So as part of the negotiation process, we sat down with these two companies and walked them through what the FTA requirements are, what the FRA requirements are, what our operational needs are, and we got a better understanding. The contractors got a better understanding of the detailed scope of work, and they adjusted their prices. Camp Construction, with the higher bid, was not able to commit to lowering their price to our budget, was $14 million. So there was a big gap, but they bid it high in the hopes that they would get it, and if they got it, great. If they didn't, there was no big loss. That's what we're facing nowadays.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Sinani.
How much was the CMAQ grant?
2.3?
Yes, sir.
This question is not so much about this contract in particular, but this provides a good example. So we always have this, I think usually it's a 10% contingency amount that we attach to these contracts. And, the contingency is always there. We always approve the contingency. And I assume it's not always the case that the contingency, the amount gets drawn down to the last penny, right?
Mayor?
Otherwise, why are we calling it a contingency? Let's just call it a contract and just get over with it. So is that the case?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sinanian, that's absolutely the case, and that's a very good point. The contingency amount that you approved, it's a reserve set aside for unforeseen conditions primarily, or if we can add items related to the project that's necessary to complete the project. Instead of going through the process and come back to council for approval, we use that contingency amount. And it's not guaranteed to the contractor, and it's not guaranteed to be spent to the last penny.
Right. But I'm not asking whether it's guaranteed or not. I think everyone realizes it's not guaranteed. Does it? It doesn't always get spent down, right?
That is accurate. We don't always spend
so
the last
where does
penny.
the money go?
It goes back to the budget.
These aren't general fund dollars that'll get swept up. They'll go back to their respective. So if it's a street fund project, it goes back to the street fund, get reused. If it's another capital account.
Do we have like an item, budget item that says money that wasn't spent down is there a way? Is there an item that we can have that we can look at as council members and say, hey, great, these amounts don't get drawn down. It's not like an automatic. Hey, by the way, here's another $2 million that you guys can call upon.
It's ultimately it goes back to that fund balance. So yes.
And the reason I asked this is because I think it was last week we had an issue where the staff was trying to get an additional amount on top of the contract, the contingency, and my question was, okay, well, we already had a contingency. Why are we getting more money? Mm-hmm. The question was, how was that contingency spent? So, can we do that? Can we? Okay,
most definitely.
All right, so that we see at the end of the day, we approve all these contracts. How much of it actually comes back?
We will provide that on a quarterly basis for you as you get your budget update.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any more questions? Me. Mr. Agajani.
I just crossed my mind now that could it be that the bid you are providing is not clear to some of these contractors, so that's why, maybe they don't want to get involved because it's not clear, and they're afraid that they write like 14 or 15 and they end up spending $20 million, so better to stay away. And the gap is so big, so maybe one understands the project differently than the other person.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Regajanian, that's a good question. In order
so wait, my questions are bad? You kidding.
What's news?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Regajanian. Thank you for the question.
Don't say it's a good question, otherwise you'll be in trouble.
So in an effort to prevent that from happening, we do provide opportunities for the contractors and bidders to submit their questions, to request clarification. We have job site walks. We walk them through the job site. We walk them through the scope of work. We provide opportunities for questions, and responses goes to all the bidders, potential bidders. So the opportunity is there. If they want to take advantage of it, they can. Sometimes, and I have worked in the construction industry long enough and with consultants, I do realize some contractors, because we have deadlines for submitting bids, they wait till the last minutes because they need to get bids from their subs. So in a mad rush to make the deadline, they make mistakes. Or if they don't have bids from their subcontractors, they just throw a number in there as a placeholder, and then they come back and hoping that they got the bid. Okay. But we make extra effort to make sure our bid specs, our plans are clear, and if not, there's an addendum process that we go through to provide more clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of technical questions. Best questions, basically.
Yeah.
Best questions. First, I want to thank our colleague, Mr. Najarian, for securing that $2.3 million because it's very instrumental. It's like 20%, 15% of our total budget for this project. How large is this site?
Mr. Mayor, I believe it's approximately 2 acres.
2 acres. And we have 24,000 square feet of administrative operations building plus a service fuel islands plus a bus wash, a car wash for buses and parking. Do you have a breakdown as to what percentage of this $16 million goes for the building portion of this construction of the building, the 24,000 square foot building?
Not off the top of my head. Without the opportunity to look at the bid schedule from the contract, I won't be able to tell you.
Yeah, because I did a quick calculation. It's like $687 a foot for 24,000 square foot building. But I wanted to know, I know the wash equipment is very expensive. I wanted to know if there, for public to know as well, if there is any specific requirements or specific equipments that we have to install or systems that we have to install in order to run this operation, because for 24,000 square foot building on 2 acres, $16 million is kind of a big ticket item. So that's why I wanted to know what do you think the...
No, unfortunately, we don't have that number currently.
Okay.
I'd like to note that, as you know...
The gentleman wants to maybe make some comments. Is that right?
You have that number?
Your name for the record, please.
It's Rudy LaFleur. I'm the owner's rep. And there is specific equipment. There's roughly $300,000 for leak detection equipment for CNG fueling and some other specific equipment associated with the bus wash that would make it not a traditional comparison based on the complexity. And there are also tooling and equipment that is specifically focused on servicing vehicles and buses that you wouldn't see in an ordinary building for comparison of square foot.
Okay, so there is a repair shop as well that has the equipment to service the buses. It's fully equipped, basically. It's not a shell that we're getting.
No, there's some fixtures that are part of it, and the detection equipment that for CNG and detection of the gases that may be emitted from the vehicles.
Okay, so altogether between the CNG equipment and the bus truck wash equipment or bus wash equipment, is it like $2 million? Was that a guesstimate that could be around $2 million in equipment?
Roughly, slightly north of $2 million, yes.
So if it's $3 million, so the rest goes to 24,000 square feet for $13 million? Is that what it is?
There's also site improvements by way of security and location for all the other facilities that are there. I mean, this is what is going to allow us to have our B-line contractor utilize our site versus having to secure their own site, which means that the folks that contract for B-line, good job that they do, it's really a small universe of people that can do that work. By having our own location for the maintenance and storage of the vehicles, it improves that industrial neighborhood along Los Angeles Street and at the same time allows for other folks to be able to utilize this, giving us a greater scope of competition for the contractor. But that means that the site itself has to be secure and able to ingress, egress, and at the same time do all of the maintenance that's necessary. So it's a building, it's a yard, it's a maintenance facility, it's there for cleaning as well. All that on this 2-acre site, which is rather tight. And so, it gets to that point where it's a little more expensive.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, what I wanted to know is because I get this question a lot. You guys spending $800 a square foot on a project like this. We want to have some answers. That's what it is. So for the future projects, if you get a breakdown, a basic breakdown, I'm not saying item by item, as to what the cost of these projects are, why, I think that would be helpful for us to make a more educated decision.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may add something, just wanted to know that this is a design-build project, so it's not just cost of construction in that 14.1 million.
Asking, yeah, it's
right.
There's design portion.
There's design portion. There's inspection.
Portion.
Exactly, testing. In addition to the fact that this is a federally funded project, and it requires the highest rate of pay for laborers and people who work on this project.
Got it. Okay. Is there a motion?
You have a revised motion at item 3, I think. Yeah, 8A3 has a revised motion. It's on the dais. No substantive changes, just grammatical.
Okay. Is there a motion with the revised motion? To incorporate the revised motion?
Yes.
Oh, I'll read it.
Is there a second? Do we want to wait for Mr. Najarian to come back?
I'll second it.
Since he brought $2.3 million, we wait for him to come back and vote for it. Who seconded? Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garabetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item would be 8B, City Attorney regarding discussion of local business preferences, minority women, disadvantaged business enterprise policy, and local hire requirements in contract procurement policies. 8B1, motion directing staff. 8B2, motion to note and file.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, at your request, we've prepared a report discussing local preferences in our contracting processes, as well as part of that request made by the council was to look at the universe of disadvantaged business programs, the status of the law and the programs on that, and then also address local hire requirements in our contract procurement process. So Ms. Martirosian of our office will go through the presentation, and we'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Garpetian, council members. My name is Dora Martirosian, and I am here to present some information, actually quite a bit of information, on local business preferences, on minority women disadvantaged business enterprise policies, and local hire requirements. We first start looking at the local business preference by just defining what it is. It is a city program which gives either a credit by way of a percentage, a percent discount, or points on bids for contracts or on proposals for professional services. This is for the procurement of city contracts. What it does is it encourages existing local businesses to participate in the contracts in city projects. It also encourages local businesses to stay in the city, to expand, and to be able to participate, even though if the price is a little bit higher to do business within the city of Glendale. It is implemented by way of an ordinance. The ordinance has to specify the qualification criteria, it has to specify what the conditions are, and it has to set the preference amount. Now, there are legal requirements for local preferences. One of them, the most important one being that if the city's charter specifically requires the contract to be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, then a local preference is generally not allowed. There are two types of procurements. One is a competitive bid contract, which is we issue a specification, and contractors, it's for labor, it's for demolition, construction. Contractors submit bids. The city assesses the bids, and the contract is awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. The other type of procurement is a competitive selection process. This is for professional services, unique services, engineering, architectural services. It's based on factors in addition to price. So the lowest price isn't the sole determining factor in the award of the contract. The city has to have a substantial reason when it's setting a local preference. For example, the city could make the determination based on a study that it's a little higher to have office space within the city of Glendale, or the administrative costs are a little higher in the city of Glendale, or any city in generally. The local preference that the city establishes has to be tailored to address the concern that the city is trying to assist its local businesses with. For example, going back to if the city makes a determination that it costs a little more to maintain a business or office space in the city of Glendale, then the local preference can't just be arbitrarily set at any percentage just to encourage local businesses to participate. It has to have a nexus. That's why when we did a survey, and you will see it later in the presentation, the local preferences are modest in scope. They're 1%, 2%, sometimes 5% for professional services contracts. Another legal requirement is that the local preference has to be for city-funded projects only. And that's what the cases deem the city to be a market participant, which means the city is not using the funds of another entity to implement a project, it's using its own funds. There has to be a provision in the local preference that the city, through its council, city manager, an authorized representative, can not implement the local preference if it violates federal or state law. If it jeopardizes grant funding, for example, then the city for that project, for that contract procurement, cannot implement the local preference. The city also has to have a definition for what a local business is. Normally, it has to be a fixed business address within the city. It can't just be a post office box. One thing that we can do for the city of Glendale, we have our business registration certificate, so we can use our BRC to verify and confirm that the city is indeed a city within the limits of City of Glendale, a business within the limits of City of Glendale. Some of the advantages of having a local business preference, of course, it encourages local business participation in the competitive contracting process. It encourages existing local businesses to remain in the city. It may encourage existing businesses to expand within the city. And it also helps decrease local unemployment. Some of the disadvantages of a local business preference include having an award of a contract to the higher local proposal after the application of the preference. And this means that, for example, if a proposal comes in at $100,000 and there's a preference of 5% for hypothetical purposes, and there's a lower proposer at $98,000. After applying that 5% local preference, the price of the local business would be deemed to be at $95,000. So the city would then go ahead and award the contract to the local business, but then the city would incur or would have to absorb the cost difference between at $100,000 and $98,000, the non-local lowest bidder. Another disadvantage is a drop in the number of non-local bidders and proposers, so that results in diminished competition. And also there's a perception of unfairness and favoritism by the city awarding contracts to its local businesses by giving a preference. So what we did is we conducted a survey of our neighboring cities. We looked at their charters, we looked at their municipal codes to see if they have a local business preference, and if so, what that amount is. For Anaheim, the preference for competitive bids was at 1%. They do not have a preference for professional services or non-competitive bid contracts. For Burbank, the local preference is 1%. However, it's used as a tiebreaker. So if all things being equal, there's a local contractor or a proposer and a non-local contractor or a proposer, then the local business preference is applied to break that tie only. And Burbank does not have a preference for professional services. Pasadena offers a 1% local business preference and 5% for non-competitive bids. Los Angeles's charter contains a provision that specifically allows the city to implement local business preference programs. Los Angeles charter is different than the other cities that we looked at. The other cities, Anaheim, Burbank, Pasadena, their charter is very similar to our charter, and it requires that for competitive bid contracts that the award be made to the lowest responsible bidder. For Los Angeles, because of their charter, they have different programs, different local business programs. For example, they have a 8% local preference for materials and supplies. They have a 10% local preference on contracts under $100,000. For professional services, they have an 8% preference. San Diego applies to 5% for materials and supplies and 5% for professional services. San Jose is 2.5%. For competitive bids and 5% for professional services. Santa Monica, 1.5% for competitive bids, and they do not have a local preference for professional services. Now, for cities of Anaheim, Burbank, Pasadena, San Jose, and Santa Monica, the local preference for competitive bids is calculated on the sales tax that comes back ultimately to the city. And we'll cover that in a couple of slides from now. Actually, in the next slide. So local business preference and how it applies to the city of Glendale. We went through the Glendale Charter. Our Charter Article 6, Section 9, it requires that for competitive bid contracts, the contract be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder after the competitive bidding process. Our purchasing policy already provides a 1% local preference for purchases of taxable goods. Now, this is not on labor, it's on goods that are taxable only. And how that works is the 1% preference is equal to the sales tax generated by the purchase of the local goods, so that 1% ultimately comes back to the city. And just for example, we used a smaller contract amount. We used the amount of $1,000, but you can imagine if that $1,000 becomes a $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 contract, then the net cost to the city, the savings to the city will be much greater. So in our example, we have a Glendale vendor and a non-Glendale vendor, a non-local vendor. And this is for the purchase of goods. The Glendale vendor, in our example, submits a bid amount of $1,000. The non-Glendale vendor is at $995. So the sales tax being 9.25%, so that's $92.50 on top of the $1,000 for the sales tax. Then we take the 1% tax benefit and we apply it, and that takes off $10 from the Glendale vendor's bid. Now, we don't apply the 1% to the non-local vendor, so that's why you see a zero there. The final contract amount is $1,092.50 for the Glendale vendor and $1,087.03 for the non-local, non-Glendale vendor. So the net cost to the city, the green highlighted numbers, at $1,082.50 versus $1,087.03, the Glendale vendor comes in at $4, almost $5 less than the non-local vendor. So ultimately, by applying the 1% preference, Glendale is saving on the purchase of goods contract. Now, what options does Glendale have for the implementation of the local business preference? One option would be to have a tiebreaker preference only, local preference only. This is where all things being equal, if we have a Glendale-based business that's competing for a contract versus a non-Glendale-based business, then the award goes to the local business. We could implement a tiebreaker 1% preference for all contracts, all things being equal. It's the same as the one above it, except we are applying the 1% local preference to the Glendale entity. A tiebreaker of 1% preference for competitive contracts. And we could also do a modest but slightly higher preference for competitive selection contracts and other contracts not requiring competitive bidding. For example, for professional services agreements and agreements less than $50,000, we could implement a 2% local preference. We could implement a 5% local preference. And another option that we could have is to amend the city charter to provide the city more flexibility, such as City of LA, to grant local preferences. The recommendation that staff is making to you tonight is to, of course, maintain our existing 1% local preference for the purchase of taxable goods. We could implement a tiebreaker local business preference of 1% for competitive bids, and implement a tiebreaker local business preference of 1% for non-competitive bid contracts. Professional services, again, contracts under $50,000. Now, the next topic we're covering is the local hire requirements. Again, we go through what it is. It's a city program which requires contractors and subcontractors to utilize local residents in their projects, in their city projects. And of course, its goal is to promote employment within the city. There are legal requirements and legal parameters that we have to work within, one of them being that the city has to demonstrate a need, a reason for implementing a local hire requirement on its contractors and its subcontractors. For example, in the case that is cited in the slide, that was a 1984 case. It was an association of labor organizations. They challenged a city ordinance which required that 40% of the contractors and subcontractors to be city residents. And the court ended up holding that the city needed to make findings and show a compelling reason to having that requirement. The common requirement, and we'll look at other cities and what they do with local hire, is that there has to be a good faith effort by the contractor if a city does have such a program. And so long as the contractor shows a good faith effort, that it's complying with the local hire, the requirements to do outreach, to try to achieve the city's goal for local hire, then the contractor is deemed to be in compliance. Now, we looked at some other cities. For example, in Berkeley, the contractors are required to advertise locally for 3 days before expanding to the general public, or to expanding their advertisements for the project. The contractors have to use local workforce development programs for recruitment, and they have to document the reasons why a local candidate did not qualify, or why local residents were not hired for the project. Pasadena has a robust outreach program to its residents. It assists contractors in the local hiring efforts. For their larger projects, the contractor is actually required to retain a local jobs coordinator. And Pasadena has a requirement that all things being equal, if a Pasadena resident interviews for a position that the contractor has vacant or new, and a non-local resident interviews for the same position, then the preference is given to the Pasadena resident. For Los Angeles, they utilize the project label agreement method. If they do have a project label agreement for a project, then the requirement is that 30% of the construction work hours have to be local hires. And contractors work with local jobs coordinators to make sure that they do the outreach necessary and that they engage the local residents for the project. And again, compliance is satisfied by following the program requirements. Now, the options that Glendale has, we could adopt an ordinance which implements a local hire program. The program, again, would encourage local hire and would establish goals. The contractors would be required to exercise good faith efforts to hire local residents, and the program would have audits. So the contractors would be audited. They would need to demonstrate with proper documentation that they tried to meet the requirements, and if they weren't able to successfully meet the goal, what the reasons were for not being able to hire local residents.
Can I interrupt you right at this? What is the difference between Glendale's options or Glendale's and Pasadena? This is what we're doing now, or this is what you're suggesting?
This is what we're suggesting if council so desires.
Okay. Thank you.
And the last topic we'll cover is the disadvantaged minority women business preference. That was vastly changed in 1996 when Proposition 209 passed. And basically what it did is it amended the California Constitution and said that we cannot provide preferential treatment on the basis of race, sex, color, or ethnicity in the procurement of public employment, education, or contracting. Now, there is an exception for federal grant funding. So if a city project is being funded with a federal grant, then of course the city, in order not to jeopardize the funding, can indeed implement a disadvantaged minority women business preference. In fact, the city does have such a preference, a policy for federally funded projects. It's in our bid specs, so every time we have a project which utilizes federal funding, the provisions are included in our specifications. The City of Richmond versus J.A. Croson Company is a United States Supreme Court case. It was a 1989 case, and that requires the case requires an independent study to show that the city or the jurisdiction that wants to implement the DBE, MBE, WBE preference has a compelling reason to do so. We often refer to this as the Croson study. So when cities or when entities want to implement such preferences, they always say, we did a Croson study, and the study is done by an independent consultant. It is rather a costly study. For example, the city of Jersey City did a study back in 2011, and it was able to document there was a disparity in the treatment of the minority disadvantaged women businesses, and that it needed to implement such a program to remedy the past discrimination. Another entity that I discovered in my research that was doing a Croson study is LA Metro. Their study is expected to be released fall of this year. And again, they utilize a team of consultants to go ahead and do the study for them. So the city's options, given the legal parameters that we have, are to implement outreach programs, to implement preference requirements. If an independent study shows that there has been past discrimination and there's a present need to remedy the discrimination, and we need these programs to be able to offer the remedies. We recommend that we continue our existing DBE, SBE, MBE, WBE program in compliance with the federal funding. As I indicated, we do include them in our specifications. We make sure that the contractors comply because we do not want to jeopardize the loss of the funds. Other than what's above, we are not recommending any further changes, again, because of the specific legal parameters that we have to work within. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? On slide 6, if you go to slide 6.
Yes.
For some reason, I think I like the idea of Pasadena where it says for preference for competitive bid contracts to have 1%, and preference for professional services or non-competitive bid contracts, 5%. That's I'm recommending.
Can you explain to me?
And how that will impact your work? I'm sorry. How will impact your work? It's going to be hard to do it, what I'm offering? To change, because you recommended to do nothing, actually, right?
For the local
whatever
business.
we have, you wanted to keep it that way. It says, at the end, you say recommendation, continue existing DBE, SBE for the federal funding, and no further changes recommended at this time. So if you change, do the change, how it's going to impact your work?
Well, the Pasadena 1% is based on it's a preference offered for the purchase of goods. That's how it is in the Pasadena Municipal Code. We have that in our APM, in our Administrative Policy Manual.
Okay.
For the purchase of taxable goods, we already offer the 1% local preference. And the reasoning behind is just like the other cities, because that 1% eventually comes back to the city.
Yeah.
Our recommendation is to maintain that 1% for the purchase of local goods. However, to also implement a tiebreaker local preference at 1%. So 2 businesses compete for the award of the contract. One is Glendale, one is non-Glendale. All things being equal, they're both qualified, they can offer us all of what we're requiring, then we extend the local preference at 1% to the Glendale business. Professional services work a little bit differently. You can offer a greater local preference because they're not competitive bid contracts. You're not required by the charter to award the contract to the lowest responsible bidder. That's why
What's
you
an
see
example of professional services?
engineering, architecture, design,
Lawyers,
unique
accountants.
services. Lawyers. Competitive bid contracts are labor, demolition, construction. Also, according to our charter, contracts under $50,000 are considered non-competitive bid contracts. Anything over $50,000 is, for labor, is a competitive bid contract.
And just to be clear, members of council, even the contracts under $50,000, there is a competitive process. It's just not required to follow that very strict lowest responsible bidder in all circumstances. There's more flexibility for either the purchasing manager or the city staff to go out and get informal bids, for example. But the point that Ms. Martirosian was trying to make on the competitive bid projects, for those projects where we're required to award those contracts to the lowest responsible bidder. What the cases say is we can't give a preference above and beyond perhaps a tiebreaker. If you're giving a preference to somebody inside that has a business within the city, and that the charter requires that contract be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, then we would be in violation of that charter provision by granting a preference to a local business that the outside of Glendale business would not have the opportunity. For the other contracts, as Dorian said, the professional services, the contracts under $50,000, a little bit more flexibility. Our recommendation for those is still to do it as a tiebreaker, but as we noted in the report, there's a little bit more flexibility there. We urge 1 to 2%, keeping in mind that the policy goal of trying to assist a local business has to be measured against the policy goal of competitive bidding and the bidding process in general, which is to get the best deal for the city. And so we're recommending to keep, if you're inclined to go outside of the tiebreaker, to keep it at a minimum level.
So what will that 5% will cause any legal problem?
I would have to say probably not. But again, I think the recommendation is not just to balance it with our
But if we make a limitation, like up to $1 million?
That's certainly something the council can do.
I think what we were just guarding against is the perception of cronyism or the perception of impropriety given the size of Glendale juxtaposed to other communities.
Because Pasadena is smaller than our city, and they're doing it.
But I think if you look at their business sector, they do have a larger business community than we do. The other thing that Pasadena did uncover is that, just as you had remarked in the design-build contract, to the extent that you have a greater local preference, you can, at least what they've seen anecdotally, is have fewer people chase those particular procurements. Because from the outside, they don't figure that they have much of a shot, or at least as good a shot, so they just don't compete.
We have to do something for our local businesses. Mm-hmm. I mean, how we are helping them, what we are doing to help them. I just wonder what we are doing specific that the other cities they are not doing.
We don't have a business license tax, which is important because in LA it's a gross receipts tax. In Pasadena it is a very significant, still more traditional business license. And we have a business registration certificate that is $50 on the renewal, or $150, Phil?
$50 in the renewal, about $260 initially.
So you want to go apples to apples in terms of doing business in Glendale, much cheaper than doing business in some of the surrounding areas, especially those with a business license. let alone a gross receipts tax like LA.
How much is the business license, let's say, in LA?
In LA, it's a gross receipts tax that is extraordinarily burdensome, and we don't have that here.
We have to do something for our companies who are doing business here. I don't know. Something should be done for them. This is our city. They come here. The rent is higher. I mean, some portion. I'm a part of LA. Rent is very low. So, if they pay something in exchange, they get low rate.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that the one thing you ask why, and we're trying to, as a recommendation, balance that notion of wanting to work with that local business community, but at the same time not give the unintended consequence that there is a perception of unfairness.
Well, let's see. I went through the three of them, the preferences, and I liked on the local business preference, the Santa Monica. I thought we could raise our preference from 1% to 1.5%. I think that would, I feel the same way as the council member Agajanian, that we are here to help our local businesses, and we should do as much for them as we can. So I would like to see that preference raised to 1.5%, and just to make sure that the local business is indeed a local business, and that has absolutely got to be a priority in any decision. Let's see, for the disadvantaged women, I would like to see on that one more outreach. I think what we're doing, working with the programs, the federal regulations that we're working on, I think those are fine, but I think we do need to add outreach to our policy so that we're sure that women and business in this community and the disabled and disadvantaged are well aware of what's going on as far as jobs. I also, on the what's the last one, is the local requirements. I'm interested in Pasadena's requirements. I think we should mandate that that this good faith policy. Right now, it's just would like for you to go along with this, but I think we need to mandate that policy. And I think we also have to make sure that when we're looking at local hires, that they are as qualified, if not more qualified, than others. So there's no question about the possibility that, or the probability that they are being hired locally rather than outside of our area. So I would go along with Pasadena conducts outreach. They mandate the good faith effort. Let's see, that if there's a tie between two hires, they hire local instead of hiring outside of the community, and of course that on private projects that receive, I guess we're already doing that. City, if they're getting financial assistance, then they have to hire local. Those are my.
With regard to the local business preference, I have not had a lot of complaints that are legitimate complaints by local businesses who want to do business with the city. The problem, I think, is more that they're not qualified or they're unfamiliar. They don't have the experience or the financial backing to be considered a responsive bidder on these programs. The mom and pop electrician says, gee, I wish I could get into a city job. Well, it's more than just that. You've got to qualify, you've got to have bonds, you've got to have experience. So I don't really see that as a problem. I don't know, maybe you guys are hearing it differently. The local hire, again, I'm not running into a lot of laborers. I mean, this is concerning labor, correct? Not prime or subcontractor. These are the laborers. I'm not hearing problems from Glendale laborers saying, you know what, I'm not getting any labor jobs in Glendale. I don't think we have a lot of laborers in that. We've got the primes and the subcontractors and the independents, but not laborers. I mean, if you guys are getting those complaints, I'm not receiving them. The disadvantaged minority and women business preferences, I think we should continue the outreach, continue where we are, but there's not a lot we can do to fiddle with that. I think we should have a, whenever we're going to go out and do some bidding, and I don't know if we do that, let's take it, for example, this CNG facility and maintenance facility. Have a meeting, a pre-bid meeting, and maybe you do that invite as many local businesses as possible. Let them know what it means to submit a bid. Let them know what the requirements are. Let them know what the experience is, the bond. There's all sorts of things. A electrician or a framer or a masonist, masonry expert can't just jump in and bid on a city project and say, oh, you guys aren't hiring local bidders. They've got to have extensive experience doing this with government projects. If we can educate them and get them thinking that way and seeing what they're going to need to do the next time around, I think that's going to be a lot better than just setting a percentage, a benefit percentage that they're not going to be able to use anyway if they're not a responsible bidder. It's more important that we teach them to become responsive bidders so they're in the game rather than give them an extra 1% when they don't even qualify for the bid anyway. So those are my thoughts.
Questions? So slide 7, where it explains the local business preference, it states that Glendale purchasing policy already provides a 1% local business preference for purchase of taxable goods from local vendors. I guess that's how the whole local business preference works. But is this do we just take their word for it? Do we check their receipts afterwards to verify that they actually purchase from local vendors?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's something we look at based off the vendor address. Mm-hmm. So if they're Citus and we do receive sales tax from them based off their Glendale address, we'll give them that 1% preference. So in other words, that we know we'll get that money back on the sales tax, so then it's given as a credit towards that purchase.
So explain, how do we know that we will get that money back?
Well, we have sales tax records and we have our vendor records. So if we know that they are in Glendale, then we can assume that they will get that sales tax, and they'll get that preference.
Okay. I'm trying to understand how the sales tax records, I guess, past sales tax records show something prospectively.
So for example, in this bid, or in the example that's given, we get 1% of that 9.25 that comes back. So if they're selling us goods and the point of sale is in Glendale, we can assume that we'll get that 1% back, so we give them that credit.
It is an assumption.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Is it an assumption?
I mean, we can't. To follow the trail, we'd have to get their sales tax returns and go to the Board of Equalization and all that to verify that. We're just assuming that that's.
We are assuming that
based off their history of paying sales tax.
Right. And then clearly, none of this applies to a private venture that takes place in Glendale. For example, any one of the development projects that took place in downtown Glendale over the last 4.5, 5 years, there's no way to compel them to use a local labor element or to purchase locally. Because I'll tell you, it's kind of distressing when you see that projects, if you cumulatively upwards of $500 million or more are being carried out in Glendale construction, and you're wondering, well, who's working here? I mean, are any of them local? Is this impacting our local unemployment? Are they purchasing from local vendors? And it's problematic, I think, for me.
And to that point, and Dorian had spoken to a little bit earlier about being a market regulator versus being a market participant. So when it's our contracts or our financial assistance at issue, we have more latitude.
Sure.
But when we're just the land use authority or the regulator, we don't have that authority to impose that requirement.
So when we are approving these projects, which is the land use sort of aspect of it, we can't condition those approvals on the developer using local labor or
On a
local
purely private
project.
project, no.
Okay. That's all I have for now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I want to thank you for a very comprehensive, complete report. This was a little bit too much for me even to observe. So, I don't have a question at this time for you. So if you want to take a seat, I think I brought this item up. I asked for this item to come up because it's not about just city jobs. It's about job creation. It's about using our own local suppliers. It's not just about the contracts that we're awarding or hiring labor force. It's not about a labor issue. It's about today we awarded $16 million, which is it's a federal funded project, but every year we award about $100, $200, $300 million of contracts. The contractors who get these bids, there should be a way. I mean, this report is telling me anywhere and everywhere that what we cannot do. This is not what we were asking for. We were asking for how can we do it. This is telling us how we cannot do it, what we cannot do. The developments that's going on in Glendale, the private developments, sure, you cannot impose anything on private developer until you give them an incentive, until they use the incentives. When a developer gets an incentive, you can ask for things back in return. Am I correct or am I wrong? Because if you can build, I don't know, I'm just shooting out a number, 10,000 square foot, 15,000, 20,000 square foot more building, and we have to give you an incentive, we can ask for something in return. And we're not asking for them to, for sure you have to hire 10% of your subcontractors or your labor from Glendale. At least give them a chance. You go to Glendale, I don't even know these guys, Glendale Building Supply, and ask them how many of these developments even gave you a chance to bid on providing material. I bet you not too many. And $500 million, $600-700 million project going on in the city, and local suppliers, they need to be able to at least bid on these projects. You give them a chance to bid on this project. You give them a chance to bid on the subcontracts, the framing contract, whatever it is. If you have ISD is hiring a company, you have to give a local people to. This is about it's not just about the contract. It's about you keep the money here, the economic spin-off that is going to happen. That's what I was going to. It wasn't about making them hire the laborers. I don't know where those laborers is going to be or what kind of jobs from Glendale for sure. It's about giving the opportunity. Many contractors, Mr. Najarian, what the complaint that I get from local contractors is they all work for City of LA, for not just the city, the school district or the college, where they can't get they're qualified to do work over there, but not here. And that's the complaint that I get a lot. So my vision, I'm only one vote, but my vision was to create an opportunity for local businesses to bid on this project, to be able at least to bid. If they don't give you a chance even to, I think that's what we need to create. A project comes in and they want to use the incentives, you can implement you can ask for things back. And that's where I was going. And I have my notes.
Do you want to give them an opportunity to answer that question, whether giving incentives actually opens the window?
Go ahead.
If that opens a window to impose requirements on private developers?
And I was just talking about this with Ms. Lanzafame. Generally, the incentives, there's a process for them. For example, in the DSP, we have a process for incentives. It's a land use approval. I'm not aware of any case law authority that allows that, because it's still something that, if they can, generally speaking, if they can show that they are qualified for it, assuming the project doesn't cause environmental impacts or that sort of thing, we generally have approved it. There's a process under the government code to use the development agreement process. So if an applicant wants a development agreement for extended approvals, so approvals to last longer than they normally would, I think there might be the ability, and I say I think because we haven't looked into that part of it in detail. I think with respect to this issue of opportunity, obviously on the public side, on the city's contracts, that's something that we can look at. How do we provide greater opportunity for folks? How do we get? And again, it's about the piece that Ms. Maruzin spoke to about providing additional outreach to our business groups, our chambers, and that sort of thing to get information out to them about not only about the bidding opportunities but about the process. That part of it can certainly be, if it's not already a part of it, it can certainly be upgraded. But as to the specific question about incentives, it's not necessarily the case that anytime there's an incentive, we can require some sort. Because basically, what you're talking about is a project labor agreement or some form of it, and so
that's not what I'm asking.
Well, that's what it is.
That is what it is.
That's what it is. I mean, it's either a project labor agreement or an agreement requiring local preferences for local contractors or subcontractors, and so. In either case, it's an additional requirement that we would have to look at in a little bit more detail. But that's essentially in a lot of cases what PLAs do. They require the developer or the owner to go and not only find local businesses but also to find local hires.
Those are the city projects.
Well, no, we
PLAs because the private projects, most of them are, some of them are union, most of them aren't.
Yeah.
So the PLAs go with the union projects. It's not imposed on.
But sometimes they go, for example, we don't have a local hire requirement in the PLA that the council approved for Grayson, but there's in there certain goals. Certain cities require the equivalent, the functional equivalent of a PLA when providing financial assistance. That's also something we could look at if that's the council's direction. But I'm not saying I don't necessarily believe that it's straight just because you're providing an incentive under the DSP, for example, that we can require that. But I'm happy to look at it.
It's not just the DSP. Even outside the DSP, there are many large projects that we award variances or what I'm trying to do is fair to the developers as well as to the public, because look, it's really a shame that if I don't have all the records, so I'm not going to go out and say, oh, nobody hired anybody from Glendale, but I don't think the number is that high, and that's what I'm getting to. I want to get to that point that it's fair to the local economy as well, to local contractors and accountants or whoever it is. I mean, after the business is open, why not hire some people from local labor force to run your business? I mean, I'm not saying hire people who are not qualified, they're not licensed, they're not bonded, they're not, they don't have insurance. Just there are so many of them out there that you can hire, and I think we can. It's not enforcing it on them. I mean, if I'm a developer, you're giving me a huge incentive. Look, I'll hire from local developers, local contractors, if I get my incentives. But if you give it to them and without asking anything in return, of course they bring all their crews, because I understand how it is. They have their own crews. They bring it in and build something and move on, and we just end up with the end project. That's Mr. Alexander.
Well, I don't want personally to burden the city with lots of changes and laws, because it will be hard to check and investigate and will be hard. But one thing I realized is there are 4,000 apartments. Construction went on recently. They finished it, except the building on corner of Pacific and Broadway. I didn't see any local contractor working, like a plumber. You mean you want to say there are no plumber or carpenter in this city that they can work in these buildings? These investors, they're coming from outside. They bring a group from outside, and the people, local people, they don't benefit from this. I mean, I don't know how many, maybe billions of dollars has been spent on this apartment buildings, but I don't see locals, they got job in there. I didn't see anybody, electrician working in those buildings. I mean, we have to do something. I mean, this can't be like a group of people, they come from outside, from here they're going to go, and they have nothing to do, or they're not connected with this city. So we have to add something. And also, again, I want to repeat, I don't want to burden this city with investigating and then checking whether they bought this or that. But we have to do something for our constituents.
Mr. Agjani, you're saying what I'm saying in a different way. So.
Whichever way, we have to do. I mean, I don't see if we are not doing anything, will be the same thing. Okay. 4,000 units will be built, and there will be no benefit to local carpenter and electrician and others.
Okay. Do we mandate a good faith effort right now? Is that in our ordinance right now, or our?
Mayor Garpich and Councilmember Devine, no, we do not have such an ordinance currently.
Okay. So that's one of the suggestions that I made, that if we make this a mandate, that they give our
local
workers,
experts.
That are qualified. Now that has to, of course, be the case.
Yes.
That could be of help in this issue. So that's why I was proposing that be added.
Yeah.
And the other is, of course, the 1.5% and also the tiebreaker in local businesses. I'm finished.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. And those are for the city purchases and city jobs, right? The local preference, the 1%. And I mean, those are all good. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. But I mean, the advantages and disadvantages that the disadvantages that it would diminish competition. We have a $16 million project. 4 out of 30 contractors that we went after submitted a bid, and only 2 were deemed complete application. Am I correct? So it's not that they're lining up from outside to bid on our projects, and having a local preference is going to scare them away. So I don't know. This number is 1%, 2% is not what my goal was to achieve. So it's my thing is if we can, Mr. Najarian.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm just saying, well, let's kind of move this along. I mean, I think we all want jobs for our residents. It matters how can we legally incorporate that in an ordinance that would really have an effect on that.
That's what I want him to tell me, because this report is telling me what I cannot do.
Well,
I want him to tell me what I can
with
do.
all respect, I mean, we had to provide you the legal parameters of what we can do. That's where we have to start the discussion, and we do have parameters of what we can do. And I think, if you want to do a 5% preference, it's not a recommendation, but you can for projects not required to be competitive bid. For those that are required to be competitive bid, it should only be used as a tiebreaker. And then for local hire, if you want to require a good faith effort, we can prepare that. And then lastly, if you want us to provide some additional discussion on incentives or development agreements when we can require PLA or PLA type requirements, because I think it's a mix, then we can look at that as well.
I'll move that.
So, but you will bring it back.
Yeah, to come back.
Well,
the details of that proposal.
Sure. I mean,
the
if you want, we can work
the tiebreaker, the
recommendation to hire local.
In terms of the preference and the local hire, we can start working on those changes, if that's the council's direction, and then bring back the additional discussion of what we do about incentives in the land use context.
Let's do that.
And if you'll include, please, the outreach for women and the disabled and
as we noted in the report, what you essentially do in that context, as it relates to minority women and disadvantaged business, is you have broad-based outreach efforts. You have an outreach to all your organizations, but it can be all your chambers of commerce. So your Glendale Chamber, the Armenian Chamber, other business groups within the city. Same thing. That's the type of outreach you do across the board, and under Prop 209 and ProSign, you're allowed to do that.
That you just notify them. Right. That's all you want.
I just want to make myself very clear as to if a developer comes in, I'm just talking about the developer, says, I want this incentive, but I'm going to hire 15% of my subcontractors, for example, or 10% or 5% from the city. That's what we're looking for to do. I mean, when you say PLA, I don't know. PLA to me is something different.
That's generally PLA has both requirements. The PLA will have requirement for labor, for the actual hiring of the labor, but usually has some requirement as it relates to hiring of local contractors or subs.
not laborers that.
The legal question for us will be, and that's the question we'll bring back, is can we impose that as a condition of a land use entitlement, where the entitlement is not just a by right type of entitlement, but like an incentive or a development agreement.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So is there a second?
Yes.
Do we need a roll call for this?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Council members Alajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. What's next on the agenda?
Was the speaker on this item actually speak already?
No, it's on 8C.
Okay. Director of Community Development at 8C regarding process for street name change. 8C1 is a motion approving a process and establishing criteria for consideration of requests to rename a city street.
Sure.
Oh, we'll have Eric Kraus come up to answer any questions. Long story short, Council had requested that we review the process by which we can rename city streets. There is in the municipal code the section that deals with street and highway names. We have put into your staff report a series of criteria as well as the process for renaming streets. And right now, as you look at page 2 and page 3 of your staff report, they're rather straightforward and really focused around ensuring that the impact on local businesses and residents is mitigated to the degree possible, meaning we change the name of the street. Hopefully we don't upset people's letterhead and business cards and that kind of thing, making sure that it's still compatible with the rest of the street naming system, and at the same time trying to reflect both the community's diversity and at the same time the city's history. Those would effectively be the criteria that you have before you in what is a rather straightforward process. If you have any specific questions relating to the item or the material in your staff report, our planning administrator, Eric Kraus, can answer those for you.
Okay. Any questions from the staff, or I have a speaker? You have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to know compatibility with existing streets. Is that like in my neighborhood? It's all like Irish names or Scandinavian names? Is that, I mean, what is compatibility with existing?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Devine, that's essentially what it would allude to. Like if you have, like some of the streets that we have in some subdivisions have more of kind of Spanish type names or something like that, you want to interject something that wouldn't really kind of flow, so it'd be harder for people to navigate through the city streets. That's essentially what it would mean.
We had that. Okay. I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes you'll have streets that are named. They have different names, but they're really, if you think about it, they're alphabetical. And so that's something or they might be first, not here in Glendale, but so much, but in other cities it's first, second, third, fourth. So those are the types of considerations you take.
Emerald Isle is a good example at the same time, too.
Right, and Misty Isle, Scottish names. Okay.
Okay. I have one card, Arutine Hartunian.
Members of the council, Mr. Mayor, city staff, it was probably a few months ago on April when we, on behalf of the Unified Young Armenians as well as the members of the public, we brought up the idea of renaming the street Sanchez into Artsakh, again, which I believe it has the support of thousands and thousands and thousands of the members of the community. And we are here just trying to, again, asking the city council to respectfully consider this measure, considering this change. We, again, decided, or the community, based on our research, we came up with this street because it was first and foremost the least impact on the businesses or any residents, as there are practically no one that lives on that street. There are no businesses that have to change their letterheads. And as far as the significance of the street, it is, again, it's in the heart of the downtown and connecting two major streets. So, again, we are respectfully asking the council to approve this measure, and hopefully, if it's so, it would be a great, I guess, a change, considering, and which would consider the diversity of this community.
Okay, so any questions or?
Is this in front of council right now? The renaming?
No,
This is
right?
just
Just the
the
process.
process.
The process. So then,
So the
process, and they can follow the process once.
So the process would be for them to take it to the community development.
Draft a letter to community development. There's a deposit for the work that we would have to do, and then we would do an analysis and present it to you. What we're suggesting is that you adopt this criteria so that we can do some further analysis. All pretty straightforward.
Well, the criteria of names being kind of the same kind of names, or all Spanish names or all Irish names or whatever, I think that's a little bit of, because in our neighborhood, Emerald Isle, it's a good example, but Rodrigo Woodlands, when you go up Cañada Boulevard, it's Cañada, it's Hill, then it's Opeachy, there's Wabasso, there's Camulus, Hiwada, and they're not all synchronized, if you will. There are different names of different backgrounds. So
those are Indian names.
Right, and I would just say I think there are factors to be considered in the process. They're not. None of the factors individually are hard or fast rules. It's just overall you're considering all these factors as part of the process. So and we did look at a couple of the cities and how they did it, and so we incorporated some of those. It seemed like a good idea to include it in case you did have a circumstance where it was a relevant factor. Maybe with this particular application, it won't be a relevant factor, but in others it might be, and that's why we made the recommendation.
Okay, so at this point, there is no motion needed?
No, we need a motion to process and the criteria.
Okay. Okay, I second. But as far as their request, they have to go through the community development and file the application, and it will come back to council.
That is correct.
So I appreciate Artin and the Young Armenians, Unified Young Armenians coming forward, and clearly I appreciate the idea of bringing an Armenian street name to Glendale. Do we have any Armenian street names? There was a joke about Mariposa, but that's another thing. I think perhaps I heard that on a TV show. I think it was on one of the comedians. The idea to bring a street like Artsakh, and this is going a little bit beyond this, I think when we start renaming streets that are, and I didn't realize, we just heard that Sanchez is one of our initial law enforcement officers, etc. But for Artsakh, I think we should look for something around the Armenian Museum. There's that roadway, which is currently an alley, but as we do improvements, we could perhaps turn that into something more of a drive, and that might be a better spot to give a new name rather than doing the rename. And you can imagine that there may be some opposition to this. And to avoid that opposition, maybe looking for a new street that would be somehow related, in this case, to our future Armenian Museum, might be a better fit.
Mr. Chairman, the only two criteria that we looked at was the significance, which maybe down the road, maybe in a few years, 5 years, 6 years, that street may become a drive. But considering that currently there's probably just going to take a few years for the museum to be built, and then it's going to be taking a few years until the street improvements to be made, and that's the reason why we decided to stick to Sanchez, and that's where we did our homework in the community. But again, and more importantly, the concern was to limit the impact on the businesses, especially a significant street that has almost zero impact on anyone. And I understand that there's some projects maybe down the road, but currently there's the Yellow Page building is facing the Brand, and the new apartments are facing Central Avenue. So that was the main two criteria that we chose. But again, and I think the duration is going to be something that's going to probably work against that one alley currently that we have, and the significance.
I agree. I don't think alley is appropriate to name the first Armenian street in Glendale, name an alley as a first project. But anyway.
Well, sir, whoa.
No,
I
you
in
don't
no
know.
way, hold on, Mr. Mayor, hold on. I in no way said that it remain an alley. There's going to be extensive improvements done, and that may be the gateway to the Armenian Museum, which shall not be an alley. So let's not clarify that as an alley.
It is an alley, and it would always be the width of that street or alley or roadway would be a width of an alley, no matter what you do to it. So I don't want to get this off the wrong foot. I think there's a proposal that's going to come to the council, and council will decide to move forward with it or not. But I think that street that was chosen, it's a great street because there are no buildings on that street. There are no addresses on that street. It would not impact a business or a resident or anybody. So again, that would be, they will be circulated through the community development, and will come to the council and we'll decide.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the
You have to
agenda.
vote, no?
Motion.
Oh, there was a motion.
If I can say just one thing, just that we just discussed the Armenian Museum as if it's an existing thing that we've actually voted on, or I'll just remind everyone that it doesn't exist, that we haven't, other than approving and extending an ENA between the city and a committee that wants to build the museum. There's nothing else there. So just pointing that out.
Okay, is there a motion?
We have one.
Motion second.
I moved it, and
Moved it?
Councilman Najarian seconded.
Thank you. Councilmember Zagajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
AT's Director of Community Development regarding request to extend exclusive negotiating agreement with Ganji Development Company Inc. for the preservation and development of city-owned property located at the former Rockhaven Sanitarium, 2713 Honolulu Avenue. D1 is a motion to authorize the extension of the exclusive negotiating agreement with Ganji Development Company Inc. for a period not to exceed 12 months.
Okay, who's presenting this?
Yes, sir. We have before you the extension of the ENA that was fully executed in January of this year. The ENA is set to expire in July. Rather than just extend it for the 6 months administratively, we are recommending to you that you extend it for the full year, recognizing that the funding program that is being pursued by the Ganji-led development team will require at least some amount of time in order to make that a reality. So if it is your pleasure, we would recommend again that we extend this for the 12 months not to exceed July 31st of 2018. If you have any specific questions about the terminology of the agreement, Jen McLean from Economic Development can answer those for you.
Any questions for Jen? So I have 3 speaker cards. Questions? No?
Maybe after
questions? Maybe after. Okay. First speaker is Salvatore. I'm gonna. Mr. Ganji. Salvatore Ganji. Sal Ganji. Oh, you pass? Okay. Mark Ganji. Yeah.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Matthew Ganji, and I'm the lead on
Hold on
the...
1 second. Excuse me a second.
Oh, sorry.
How long would you like to give us?
3 minutes.
Go ahead.
And I'm the lead on this project representing our group, and I'm really happy to be joined tonight with our father, Salvatore Ganji, who's here, and also Mark Ganji, who's been working with our historical consultant doing all the architecture.
Great. Yeah, we've been excited to work on the project and are excited to continue working on the project. It certainly is not a straightforward type of project. We're exploring some grant funding, which does take some additional timing. So So anyway, that's why we're here tonight. We have done some extensive work during this first 6 months. We did the first survey that's been performed on the site, which was extremely extensive, surveying all of the buildings and also looking at all of the grades and all of the impacts that we will have on what our interest is in with the property. We've also gone and field measured and surveyed every specific building, which again is something that hadn't been done in the past. So a lot of our work to this date has been getting us to the point where we really understand where these historic buildings sit and also how they sit in the landscape, and also surveying the trees and relating that back to the tree report. We have produced a site plan which shows the additional property that exists next to Rockhaven, used as parking that would support the project, and that's been laid out without damaging any of the existing trees and looking at the specifics. So right now our civil engineer is providing grades at all the trees and seeing that we can make the parking work within the codes, but that's something that will support the use of the project. So we're here to answer questions about it. And
one other thing to add as well is, since we've been doing our due diligence, it's been getting a lot of interest in the historical community. For Women's History Month in March, the National Park Service had it as the featured property in the country. So that's been pretty incredible that we've seen also.
Okay. Any questions from the speakers? No?
Just
okay.
one question, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if they reviewed the schedule which you're going to give them, how they have to perform? Are you aware of this new schedule of performance?
Yes, we are.
So do you have any problem with it?
No.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next
Thank you
speaker is Bill Wiseman.
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian, City Council members, City staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from far north Glendale. I'm going to be very brief tonight. I'm just here to speak as a member of our community in support of this project and in support of the Ganji company and family who have deep roots in our community. And we believe they're on the right track to accomplish really something wonderful with this property. We also want to mention we truly appreciate the support of our city council, because I know in the past it's to some extent you've gone out on a limb and taken some risks in supporting the community in far north Glendale. And we very definitely appreciate that, what you're doing, and hope we can ask for your support for the extension of the ENA. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions? Yeah, I have no more cards.
I do.
Mr. Najani.
So I appreciate the Ganges coming forward. I do want to sort of remind you that you've got the deal now. You don't have to do the showboating. You don't have to do the politicking. What we need you to do is to adhere to these performance schedules and performance markers. So please, if it's between doing an interview with Natural History Magazine or sitting down and doing your operating expenses and breaking them down, it's really, we're with you already. We're with you. We don't need to hear why you're better than all those other 5 or 6 other applicants who were before us a year ago. So crack down. Get down to it. This is the hard work right here. You've got the ENA. We want you to succeed, but we've got to. We owe it to all the residents to see that you're diligently focusing on the nitty-gritty of the project. I know you're seeking funding. I think that's great, but double down on your efforts so we can have a successful project. We'll all be in hot water if this doesn't work out. So we want it to work. We definitely want it to work out. We picked you. We love you. The community loves you. So Time to hit the books at this point. Thank you.
Any more comments? Anybody else?
Just nice to see the family here, and good luck with the project, and let's see how the vote goes.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
I second. Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item E is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding recommendation to approve the Los Angeles Basin Regional Planning Unit Regional Workforce Development Plan for fiscal year 2017 through 2020. E1 is a motion to approve the Los Angeles Basin Regional Planning Unit Regional Workforce Development Plan for fiscal year 2017-20, and submission to the State of California's Employment Development Department and the California Workforce Development Board, and authorize the mayor and the city manager or his designee to execute all relevant documents with contractors, State of California, and the United States Department of Labor for the plan's approval, implementation, and use.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, good evening, Mayor Garpetian, members of City Council. My name is Judith Velasco. I'm the Workforce Administrator under the Community Services and Parks Department. Under our section, we are charged with administering federal funds, workforce funds, through the Department of Labor called WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. This workforce law was passed in 2014, and since its passage, we have been responsible for compliance of various items. So the regional plan is one of many items that we have to comply with, and it's the first, I would say, and many new items of compliance. So the new law actually specifies now regional units within the state of California. Currently in the state of California, there are 46 workforce boards. We are one of 46. These boards are created through various agreements. Currently, the Verdugo Consortium, which administers the Verdugo Workforce Development Board, which administers the WIOA funds, is brought together through a joint powers agreement through the cities of Burbank, Glendale, and La Cañada Flint Ridge. It's through agreement that we're able to administer these workforce dollars. Now, under the regional plan, which now includes the Los Angeles Basin region, we are working collaboratively with our 6 local boards, which is LA City, LA County, Foothill, Pacific Gateway, Celico, and South Bay. Now, in the past, we've always worked collaboratively with the other boards in an informal basis. We have done joint ventures such as joint job fairs, joint employer summits. But what this plan does is really solidify our relationship with the other workforce boards and allows us to really come together under a formal agreement with a commitment to serve the populations that all of us are required to serve, populations that have multiple barriers to employment. One example of regional work is currently our work with the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transit Authority, Metro. Just recently on July 28th, all the 7 workforce boards brought together our chief local elected official. I know Mayor Garpetian, you were at the event, and it was the signing of a memorandum of understanding with all the boards and elected officials to commit to helping Metro with their workforce needs. In about 3 years, 39% of their workforce will be retiring, and they need to plan ahead in order to develop pipelines to those openings, and the pipelines will incur career pathways and opportunities in both construction and non-construction work. So this collaborative is a great example how we will be working with the other 6 workforce boards to making sure Metro is successful and basically the whole area is successful and creating a dynamic workforce. As I mentioned before, we've had a history working with our regional workforce boards, and this agreement that took about a year in the making was a very collaborative effort. We held about 19 public forums. Out of the public forums, we had 500 people in attendance representing organizations as diverse as community-based organizations, labor organizations, education, the public. Based on all the public comment we received, it produced a 35-page document, and it could have been longer longer, but that was a state requirement that we couldn't exceed 35 pages. I actually brought copies for all of you. It's 35 pages plus 100 pages of attachments. And our goal for this coming year is really to implement what we set forth in the regional plan. The City Council report you have in front of you lists requirements A through H, which are federal requirements that are required in the plan and that we've been successful in putting forth. Additionally, the City of LA is the lead facilitator in the implementation of the regional plan and will be working with us along with the workforce consultant that was hired through them and funded through the State Board. So we're asking respectful approval of the regional plan and moving forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? No.
I'd like to say one thing. Ms. Velasco, you have done an amazing job since you took over this position. You are knowledgeable. You always have information and good information, and I just want to compliment you on a job well done.
Thank you, Councilmember Devine. I appreciate that.
Comments? Thank you, Ms. Velasco. I echo my colleagues' comments. I was at the Metro's event. It was a great event, well attended. And I think Metro is going to create a whole new industry for our future generation through job creation. That's one of them.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sunanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
8F is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding grant application to the California Park and Recreation Society, CPRS. F1 is a resolution supporting the submittal of a grant application in the amount of $168,564 to the CPRS for the replacement of the playground equipment at Carr Park and Nibley Park.
I'll move the item for discussion purposes.
I'll second.
Is this a good deal on the equipment, Onik?
There is.
I mean, that's what we're...
Basically, we're looking into replacing two playgrounds, one at Carr Park, one at Nibley. The equipment alone is $337,000, and we're asking for $168,000 from CPRS. CPRS is California Parks and Recreation Society. They're giving away $2 million in funding to 15 agencies statewide, and we're going to be we're requesting to apply for $168,000.
So it'd be no impact to our general fund.
No impact to our general fund.
New equipment in two parks, Carr and Nibley,
Yes.
for the kids and youth to play.
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
Good luck. Good luck.
Can you show us on this slide the 300,000 you said?
Yes.
Can you show us which equipment is that?
The Carr Park is around $225,000 just for the equipment only. It doesn't include installation and project management.
Okay. And this is the
aerial photo. We'll have this. Here's another photo. There's 6,500 of square feet of existing play area that we currently have. We'll be taking disassembling the current playground and replacing it with a new playground.
And this is how much?
6,500 square feet.
No, I mean the equipment, the cost of the equipment.
Just for the equipment is $211,000.
211,000?
Yes.
Okay.
The second facility would be Nibley Park. This is a little bit cheaper. It's 6,100 square feet. Total cost is $125,000. The one at Carr Park will have 62 different items, play items, and
62.
62.
And 162,000.
No, 62 play items at 225.
225.
120.
And this one would have 32 play items at 125,000. So a totaling of 337,000 in play equipment, and we're asking for a 50% match. Currently, we have around 630,000 budgeted in our playground replacement program. That's part of our CIP projects that we requested the last few years.
The one in Carr Park, how many play items?
Can I go back?
There are 62 different amenities. So if you see swing, we're going to have a swing set of 4. That's 4 swings. We're going to have the climbing bar, a slide, and basically a little jungle gym area where they can swing on and basically brachiate. It's called brachiating. So the design will encompass 6 elements of play, such as climbing, sliding, swinging, balancing, and spinning into all the new play areas.
Okay. I have a question. How do you decide which park gets which kind of equipment? I mean,
We have
they're so different.
our friends over at Public Works, where they have a purchase order with a playground inspector. They come and inspect our playgrounds on an annual basis. Carr and Nibley are over 12 years old. And we also have our staff, park maintenance staff, go out there and see if we have if we have a need to replace playgrounds. We'll go out and put in our CIP program.
No, but I mean the difference in the apparatus in both, the equipment in both of these parks is totally different. Carr Park and Nibley, the equipment
Yes.
is different. How do you decide what goes in each park?
We worked with our the consultant at Game Time and Playcore. There are 2 consultants that are working with CPRS, and they gave us 5 conceptual designs, and staff went ahead and picked these 2 designs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there a motion? There was a motion and a second.
Motion and a second. Just need to vote on it.
Who seconded? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian? Yes. Councilmember Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Thank you. At 8G is Fire Chief and Chief of Police regarding requesting award of contract for pre-employment background investigation services. G1 is a motion authorizing city manager or his designee to execute separate professional services agreement with Arroyo Background Investigation for pre-employment background investigation services for the fire and police departments. 2 is a resolution of appropriation.
Yes, sir. At this point, we are requesting that you allow us to enter into agreements with a firm called Arroyo to do background investigations, one for police, one for fire. Previously, we had used retired police officers and firefighters to do this work. The folks at PERS, in their infinite wisdom, have decided that ongoing employment by retirees, which was very cost-effective for us, is no longer in alignment with how they want to do business, and so we basically have ceased that process, and we went out to RFP and solicited bids for actual background investigators to look at the needs within the 2 departments and came back with Arroyo. So at this point, we have both Chief Fish as well as Deputy Chief Povolitis that are here to talk about the process and also what goes into a background investigation if you have any questions.
Questions? Yes. You have a question? Good. Yes. Okay. Welcome to you.
I mean, that background, what we are checking.
Your microphone.
Oh. When I have to have it off, I have it on. And when okay, what this background check includes of what we are checking?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, to be specific on what we check pretty much everything in a person's background when it comes to when they say they have an education, they have a bachelor's degree. We verify that. We get their transcripts. We check any criminal background as it relates to traffic tickets, misdemeanors, past felonies, drug use, drug abuse, any of those types of things that might impact their performance as a police officer or as a firefighter.
Traffic tickets will impact on the employment of the person?
It could, yeah. If there's excessive traffic tickets within a certain period of time, absolutely.
And this background check is not just when they join fire department or police department. Do you do background checks afterward, like the person who is your
ongoing
employee?
background checks?
Yeah.
No, we don't. But we do have a system that's in place, at least within the fire department, that if you were arrested, you would be notified through the DMV. The DMV would have a pull notice, and they would let us know that someone was arrested. And we would also get that information from anybody that knew that it was a Glendale police officer or a Glendale firefighter that was arrested.
Like if something happens, they did in Las Vegas, then they get arrested. Would you be notified?
We've had that in the past. I think
That's
I will
what
let,
I'm asking.
I will let my friend from the police department address that if you would like to.
Mr. Mayor, Member of Council, Councilmember Agajanian, Carl Pohl as Deputy Police Chief. Not only do we have automated reports, but we also have obligations that if things occur to officers, they have a policy obligation to notify us, and then we have an internal investigation process that would pick it up from there.
Okay. Credit, judgments,
social media.
All sorts of social media.
We
stuff.
look at everything.
It's a comprehensive background.
I have one quick question. Just want to make sure I'm reading this report right. It's contagious. How many background checks a year do we do approximately? It says 150 to 180, something like that.
That's about, yeah, on average about 150 to 180. And the reason why we do so many, sir, is because the background failure rate is around 65%. It hovers around 65%. So what we're doing is we're bringing in a lot of people just to get to a number that we can hire and actually have the faith that we're putting these people into a public environment where they have to make decisions on their own. Police officers and firefighters are left with your valuables, right?
Sure.
They're going to go into your house. They're going to take care of your house. And we have to make sure that they're of the utmost character, and we can't have it any other way. And that's how we have the public trust.
And the fiscal impact on us is 125 from the police side?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And police department does 80 to 90 background checks? Is that what it is?
Those are the ones that we will need to outsource. We still do some by full-time employees,
okay,
but the other ones were picked up by the part-time employees.
Yeah, I'm reading here, it says the average cost per completed background, including 5 employment visits and on-site interviews, will be between $1,450 and $1,600. Will be $1,500, let's say, average. And you are saying you are doing 182 and the police does 82, that will be, let's assume that's 300.
Okay.
315, each is 1,500. How it comes to 752,000?
Over 2 years.
Oh, this is 2 years?
Yes, 2 years.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's okay.
Any more questions?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
H is Fire Chief and Chief of Police regarding acceptance of funding from the United States Department of Homeland Security 2016 Urban Area Security Initiatives WASI grant program in the amount of $476,878. H1 is a motion to accept grant funding and authorize city manager to execute an agreement with the City of Los Angeles for the award of funds under fiscal year 16 WASI grant program. 2 is a motion to authorize the execution of a purchase agreement with Lair Auto Electric in an amount not to exceed $100,000 for automated license recognition systems. And 3 is a resolution of appropriation.
Socha?
Yes, sir. Can we also get I read in as well because they're related? We'd like to consider them or present them together for you.
I, as Chief of Police, regarding reallocate previously accepted and allocated United States Department of Homeland Security 2015 Urban Area Security Initiatives WASI Grant Program funds and authorize the purchasing manager to enter into agreements for the purchase of automobile license plate reader systems. 1 is a motion authorizing the purchasing manager to enter into agreements to purchase automobile license plate reader systems.
Yes, sir. We would just like to ask your consideration on the 2016 and 2015 H and I, respectively, urban area the security grants that we get from Department of Homeland Security. What we are asking, as you would accept these grants and authorize the purchase agreements and their appropriation, are for the automated license plate reader program that the PD operates, particularly in the downtown where it's most effective, but we have them on our vehicles. Carl, do you want to talk a little bit about the Alpers?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, yes, the program is very effective. We have about 44 units total in process, and this grant funding will start to replace some of our older units that are now beyond repair and no longer working. So between the two grants, we'll end up replacing 11 of them. The one other thing that this will also do is we've been working with the Glendale Galleria, who actually has some foresight here, because they are installing their own system in their parking spaces, and this will allow us to have software and enter into an agreement with the Glendale Galleria so that we can query their system. So that, when we've talked about, and we just went through National Night Out, we talk about how having a safe city doesn't happen by accident. Well, this is one of those opportunities where actually working with one of our key business partners in the downtown area will allow us to be more effective with the resources that we have in maintaining the community's safety.
How many equipments we have on the vehicles now?
We have 44 units in total right now, plus or minus.
But are we adding? We're just replacing?
No, this is to replace and maintain our existing equipment.
Are these? Is this equipment all over the city, or is it one place, or?
No, our equipment is actually mounted on our police vehicles. And so as the police vehicles drive, the camera systems are picking up the license plates, and then it will check it against like stolen car databases. So if you will, I'm an old guy. So when we used to do this, I would have to go down the street and I'd have to call a plate out to dispatch, or you could type it into the mobile digital computer and then get a response back. Well, now automation takes that over.
Great. Okay.
And let me ask, and I think they can do that. Let's say that you've scanned plates, collected them in your database, and sometime in the future you get a call that there's a bank robbery with this license plate. You can go back in that database and detect where and when that license plate was picked up.
Yes, that we can.
So it's not just real time, there's a stolen car.
There is an investigative aspect that if, let's say, you are the witness to a crime and you picked up a license plate, we can go see if any of our cars have seen that license plate.
It's very effective in that regard. A little bit sneaky, but you have to be, that's detective work, I guess.
Proactive. It's proactive, and it's a very effective investigative tool. And as I said, it's one of the things that we use to help, using technology to leverage our existing resources to keep our crime stats where they are.
Okay. And they pinpoint the stolen vehicles when they drive. They can pinpoint.
Real time. You could do that real time, right?
Real time.
It buzzes off or whatever.
Councilmember Sinani.
Yep. So the ALPR scanners or the equipment that's to be purchased, I guess the recommendation is being made that we purchase from a specific vendor, Vigilant Solutions.
Yes, sir.
And I guess there are others in the industry, but this recommendation is being made because most other law enforcement switched to this equipment?
Yeah, most everybody in Los Angeles County has switched to Vigilant, and as Councilmember Najarian was referencing, part of the value for us is the regional information sharing, since criminals don't know geographic borders. They can be next door, they can be in Los Angeles, and so wanting to be on the same platform that everybody else is, so that data can be shared and that we can also retrieve that data.
So is the current equipment which we carry is manufactured by 3M? Is that a problem in terms of the interoperability between the departments?
No. If you approve this contract, the Vigilant software will integrate the old 3M equipment. It will be able to read it, and it will share it in a more, if you will, efficient manner amongst the police departments.
I understand. What I'm saying is the current 3M that you're using, is it problematic? Because if everyone switched to Vigilant, but we're still on the 3M, it have problems manifested themselves.
It is now outdated, and they don't have the support staff that they had, and they have not kept up with the most recent technology Vigilant has, and so now we're looking to switch to the Vigilant platform, and it will integrate the old 3M equipment. So we won't lose the old 3M equipment. That will continue to work, but the software, the investigative tools will all be under Vigilant, so that will actually be more effective for us.
Okay. Well, I always sort of pick on any component of a contract or anything that's brought in front of us that doesn't involve a competitively bid process, but as goes with most professional equipment, which requires expertise, and we have to rely on your sort of representations as to how that's going to impact the department and why it's necessary to go with this company as opposed to the other. So I'm going to rely on those representations. And
when we take your trust very seriously, so we vet this and we're making a recommendation to you that we truly believe that this is what is best for the city of Glendale.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
Both items?
I'll move both items. Yes.
H and I.
H and I.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Zagajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
That takes us to J, Fire Chief, regarding implementation of computer-aided dispatch software system upgrade and to perform sole source procurement with next generation spatial solutions to provide multi-gen display service, multi-gen location service, and multi-gen spatial infrastructure to the Verdugo Fire Communications Center, public safety answering point, and related mobile application software for the 14 fire departments that Verdugo Fire Communications Center serves. J1 is a motion to approve an amendment to an existing professional services agreement between the City of Glendale and Northrop Grumman Service Systems Corporation in an amount not to exceed $1,503,504 plus a contingency of $255,526. 2 is a motion to approve a professional services agreement between City of Glendale and Next Generation Spatial Solutions in an amount not to exceed $682,608 plus a contingency of $102,391.
Socha?
Yes, sir. Somewhat bittersweet, and I don't mean to put him on the spot, but I think this may be Don Wise's swan song for us in terms of the investment that we are recommending to you by way of the upgrade and replacement of our CAD system and Verdugo Dispatch. So I'm not wanting to steal any of his thunder because he has vetted this up one side and down the other for quite some time. Let me have Don Wise tell you about the next generation of computer-aided dispatch in Verdugo. And thank you, Don.
Thank you, Scott. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, glad to be here this evening and talking in front of you. I think I have a slideshow here, and it's a brief one. I want to go back a little bit. I think we did the Work Boot Tuesday program last fall, and we brought you into the communications center. We showed you the 911 system that operates for the 14 fire departments that we have, and we explained that we have a next-gen 911 system that we were implementing as a part of what we called a ring project. There was Verdugo Fire and 7 police agencies, 911 centers that were attached to that project. Essentially what we did with that project is we went from copper wire to an IP-based network. And what that did is it really opened us up to all of these new information sources coming forward in the future. And I want to point out a couple of them. So, for example, the alarm and the sensor services. In the future, you're going to hear the word Internet of Things. Your refrigerator is going to be talking to you. Your lights are going to be talking to you. Your home is going to be talking to you. The sensors in the ceiling for the fire alarms are going to be talking to us. And in the event that there's a fire alarm that goes off, one of them goes off, it makes sense that we'll probably send one fire engine to investigate. But if we get multiple sensors going off in the ceiling, that probably means that there's a fire and we want to send a different response. So these new streams are going to be telling us more actionable information going forward. We have text to 911 that's coming to LA County here shortly. It should be here by the end of the year. It's been rolled out as a soft launch. I can tell you that Burbank and Glendale and Pasadena, you can text to 911 today, but we're not going to be officially rolling that out until the end of the year. We're going to have cameras and social media services that will be able to feed into a 911 system in the future and being able to take advantage of that type of information. We'll have emergency medical registries. So, for example, Ms. Devine, if you were to post your personal information into a medical registry, you dialed 911 from your home, you would want that information to go to the paramedics. And it would only arrive to the paramedics at the time that you called 911. So things like that are what is coming in the very near future as we roll into a next-gen 911 system. And we're 95% complete with our system locally. AT&T has about 5% more to go on this. As a result of this type of information that we knew it was coming forward, and we started this project in 2012 and implemented it in 2015, we recognized that our CAD system was old. We've refreshed it over the years. We've given it new hardware. We've given it new software. Our vendor is Northrop Grumman, one of the biggest defense contractors in the industry. They build battleships and submarines and things like that, but they also have a CAD system, and it's very robust, very resilient. But ours is 30 years old, and it's based on COBOL, a very ancient language built in 1959, if anybody remembers COBOL. I believe they taught it back in business school. And the industry has since moved on, and it doesn't play well with these types of devices today. I think you all remember the Pulse Point project that we recently completed. And there was a lot of work around to make that happen with our current COBOL CAD system. So we needed something a little bit more modern. We need a modern CAD system in order to move forward, to be able to accept all of these new media streams that will be coming in the future. And we need to be able to deliver that back out to all of our folks in the field, our first responders, as well as our dispatch centers. So we started taking a very hard look at the CAD vendors that were out there in the world. In fact, we did an RFP process with 7 police agencies and ourselves to try to do a CAD system together. So we're thinking outside of the box. Hey, we want to share data. We want to be able to do something together. We want to have a common operating picture of who's where and what they're doing. We want the police units to see our fire units and vice versa. We want to know where the incidents are. And we did an RFP process, and we got 7 responses, and boiled down to 2 vendors. And one of the vendors decided not to wait for the RFP process to finish up and started doing some back-end deals and voided the entire RFP. And the other vendor that could have been selected went bankrupt. So we learned some lessons as a result of some of this research that we did. And on top of that, our CAD vendors that are out there in the world, there used to be 10 of them, and what we call Tier 1 CAD vendors. Those are the vendors that could scale to the size and volume of what we do. Verdugo handles about 158,000 phone calls per year, and tens of thousands of incidents behind that. We're around 80,000 incidents per year. So we're doing a lot of work. We actually do about 10% of the incident volume in LA County. And there's then LA County Fire, LA City Fire, and Long Beach Fire being the other 3 big folks in the backyard. So as a result of that RFP process, we did in parallel multiple vendor demos as well with LA City Fire and with LA County Fire. We brought them to our station and did multiple vendor demos. And we realized that the CAD vendors that are out there today are not doing too much differently from each other. They're pretty much spot on with what they do. They understand core services. They sell whatever is out of the box. But the CAD vendors are now merging. They're buying each other up, leaving us with a smaller pool of CAD vendors to choose from. And with Northrop Grumman in play, we now have 6 Tier 1 CAD vendors that are out there in the world that could potentially do something for us. The more that we got into it, the more that we recognized that reputation was a key factor for us, and that we had a long-standing relationship with Northrop Grumman for 30-plus years. Minimal issues. They have minimal issues with their implementations. They're a large company. They're international. Their most recent installation was London Ambulance Company. London Ambulance handles 1.4 million 911 calls per year. That's huge. So we needed a vendor that could scale to our size and our volume of business. On top of that, we wanted a vendor that could support tiered dispatching. That's huge for us because we're seeing that 85% of our medical calls is 85% of our business, rather. And then the other 15% is fire calls. And it's growing. It's not changing. And we need something that will be able to dispatch our apparatus more efficiently and based on perhaps a personnel's training and capability or that apparatus's capability, if you will. So we're bringing in, we wanted something that would fine-tune to that process and create something a little bit more efficiently. As a result of this entire 5-year process, and we have been to over 60 different CAD vendor demos, site visits, conferences, CAD-to-CAD meetings with LA County and LA City, we finally realized that there were probably only 2 vendors out there in the world that could do this business, and that was our own vendor, Northrop Grumman, and another vendor. And Northrop Grumman, in their best interest, gave us an offer of under $1 million for software. And the other vendor that we were considering gave us an unsolicited bid of $1.5 million for software. And we recognized also a technical issue with that particular vendor. And we said to Northrop, let's do one more vendor demo with you and with the fire chiefs and with our IT staff to ensure that we're all on the same page. We're all asking the appropriate questions that we need in order to do our business going forward and for the 14 agencies that we serve. And we did that on June 14th, and the fire chiefs and the IT staff selected Northrop Grumman to go forward. So it really boiled down to a comfort level for our current vendor, knowing what we know with the other vendors that are out there in the world and how they do business. It really just boiled down to a simple comfort level for us, and there was nothing compelling for us to entertain these other vendors, other than that one vendor I spoke about, and they were $500,000 more. That brings me to, and I want to show you one more piece here. Okay. Probably talked over myself here. Northrop Grumman is also being very innovative. You see there a watch. Just like the watch that's on my hand, I get an update and it's getting haptic touch every time pulse point goes off. And I know that an incident is being dispatched. Well, Northrop Grumman is developing a watch for our folks out in the field, where if they're in a high volume area such as the Glendale Auto Show or the Rose Parade, where they can't hear the radio traffic, they can actually be dispatched by a watch and get all the information that they need to go to the location that they need to go to. I haven't seen anything like that out there in the world, and Northrop is the only person or the only vendor that is currently developing that out. We also ran into issues with some vendors that chose not to even entertain the idea of iPads or Android devices or tablets. They didn't want to spend the $2 million on research and development for 10% of the workforce. And I can tell you that my response to that was 10% of the workforce is making a decision on your product. So that vendor is still not doing anything with portable devices, just mobile computer terminals. So as part of this CAD upgrade project, every CAD comes with a map. Northrop Grumman has a map, but it's a closed environment. And as the result of that 5-year research, we came across this vendor, NextGSS, or Next GSS Spatial Solutions. What they offer is really 5 products in one. They're giving us display services, which means that we get to see where our apparatus is, where the status is. We also get to see where the phone call comes from and arrives on the map, as well as our incident location. But it's more than just that. They've opened up their architecture through a new standard called the EIDD, and this is as technical as I'm going to get for you tonight. The EIDD stands for Emergency Information Data Document. It is a standard that was approved for use January of 2017, and they're the only vendor on the market that has currently got it in their product. And the reason for that is because their product contains CAD to CAD. And that's the holy grail for us in the fire business, is to get our CAD systems connected. And we're trying to do work with LA County Fire to make that happen. And the EIDD is necessary for these 2 disparate systems to be able to talk to each other in a common language, in an open, non-proprietary format. So this is the only vendor that actually does that. The other piece behind this is that there's a lot of features and functionality behind this particular product. When these folks arrive on scene, if there's hazard information to the location that they're at, it will alert them what is that hazard. In addition, it will alert them to what the hazard is nearby. So if they're on scene of a fire at a structure fire, but next door is a gun shop with ammo, they're going to be alerted to that and what type of ammunition and things of that nature. And they can be proactive with that type of information. It's actionable intelligence. Okay. So other things that we can layer onto that map, Doppler radar. That would be really nice to have as a service. Real-time traffic. We can't do that today. These are some of the things that we can do. Geofencing is huge for us. We want to be able to, when the apparatus leaves the fire station and they're 25 feet away, put them en route automatically. And then when they arrive within 1 block of the incident, put them on scene automatically. Vice versa, if the police department is doing something that we need to stay away from, they might be doing something that's undercover, we can have that work in the opposite direction, that if the fire engine or the ambulance encroaches on that area, it alerts them to stay out of that area, if that makes sense. So a lot of features and functionality that we've never ever seen before in a particular one product, one display. And then again, back to the CAD to CAD, we also did an RFP process with the mayor's office, LA Department of Homeland Security, and we started that in 2013. We worked on that for 3 years. We finalized it in 2016. We got 2 vendors to respond to that, and it would have connected LA City Fire, LA County Fire, Verdugo Fire, and Long Beach Fire. And why is CAD to CAD so important? If Engine 28 in the north end of Glendale is closer to an incident in LA County, we want them to be able to respond to that for automatic aid. And vice versa, we want LA County to be able to respond into Engine 28's area if they're not available and they're closer to respond. That's where CAD to CAD comes in. It's an electronic exchange of that information automatically based on that unit's location to the incident. And it's more efficient. It cuts down on time, and we want to save seconds when it comes down to saving human life or property. So back to the CAD to CAD RFP. We got 2 responses. We had a budget of $1.8 million. One vendor came in at $7 million. The other vendor came in at $6 million, 3 to 4 times over budget. And of course, they killed the RFP process. So that was also a learning lesson about CAD to CAD. In terms of justification for why we were considering sole source, for NextGSS, we just simply saw superior features and functionality in one product and display, open architecture to integrate any type of a service layer. Their security profiles and their back-end management down to the field level is incredible. One of the things that we can do with this product is extend it to the water and power department, and they would only see those instances that are necessary for them to see. So for example, if we have a high wind event and there's wires down, they would see only those calls. They don't need to see our traffic collisions. They don't need to see that Jane Doe is fallen down on the sidewalk. They don't get those calls. We can actually configure it so they would only see those events that pertain to them, if that makes sense. It's the only product that meets the I3 NINA standard for call workflow and I4 standard for incident workflow. They're actually ahead of the game, and the reason that they're ahead of the game is they've been watching the standards change, and as the standards change, they've been implementing it into their product automatically. If I go to other CAD vendors today and I ask them for these things, I get the deer in the headlights look. They don't know what I'm talking about, or I get, well, we'll be there in 2 years. So they're well ahead of the game. It also works on any device type, Apple, Android, or Windows, so we're not limited to the device. And it's the only sole vendor with a working EIDD, which is a standard of exchange for next-gen and CAD to CAD data. Based on all that information, we had a visit with our purchasing manager, and that was his recommendation as well to seek sole source approval from City Council. And then on top of that, it was selected by the Tri-City Fire Chiefs and the Tri-City IT staff as well. So that is my brief presentation. I probably went over my 10 minutes. I apologize. And this is probably the last time you'll see me before I retire out. So,
Okay, any questions?
No, I just want to commend you for all the research that you've done and the forward thinking for the department. Another reason that our fire department is like the best there is, and wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you, Ms. Devine.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Questions?
No question. Just, I don't know if you heard what I said to Carl Povolitis on the previous item. I mean, same kind of a situation where we have to rely on your professional evaluation and estimation of the equipment and what's best for us. And I'm sure you've taken the cost efficiency into the calculation and rely on what you say. Just an observation that the mayor and I were making. This is very, sort of highly technical equipment, and it appears that at least NextGen is a Canadian company from Montreal. I wish they were like a U.S. company making this stuff, but it is what it is at this point. So.
I think the U.S. companies will catch up. In fact, they're pretty. They've been surprised by NextGSS. They have a lot of catching up to do, including Northrop Grumman, who, when they saw this product, they initially poo-pooed the idea, and they said, in your best interest, we'd like to take a harder look at the application programming interface from this company. And we said, sure. And a 1-hour conversation turned into a 3-hour conversation, with the following meeting on a Monday from Northrop Grumman stating, this is the cleanest API we have ever seen, and it's going to take us 2 years to catch up.
I have one more comment, and that is that I saw that talking refrigerator. You need milk And I was in China, I believe, last year. It was either South Korea or China. I believe it was China. Amazing what's coming in the future. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Some refrigerators, they will order all the food you need from the department stores and get it delivered to you. And pretty soon they will answer the door too. So
soon they'll eat it.
No need for us. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communications. There is one card, I believe.
Okay, I have an. Oh, you have. All right. After that, one.
Mr. Brockman? Daniel Brockman?
Hi. I have 5 minutes, right?
Yes.
Not that, but it says 3 here. Good evening, Mayor Garpetian, council members, staff. My name is Dan Brotman. I've been here before. You know, I teach economics at Glendale College and live in the Woodlands, Verdugo Woodlands. I'm here to follow up on an email that I sent to you on July 26th. But before I do that, I want to thank you because I missed the meeting where you passed the resolution to join the mayor's National Climate Action Agenda. So I want to thank you for that. I know these things are, symbolic and it doesn't really require the city to do anything, but I still think it's important on, major regional and national issues to, express our voice. So thank you again. As you probably know, there's a bill going through the state legislature called SB 100, Senate Bill 100. And what it does is it ratchets up the renewable portfolio standard to 60% in 2030. It's currently 50%, so it ratchets it up to 60%. And in addition, it sets a new goal for California to get to 100% zero carbon electricity by 2045. It was passed by the Senate. It's now sitting in the Assembly, and they'll take it up when they get back from recess on the 21st of this month. My request is that the council step up like you did for the climate mayors to endorse this bill. Now, I understand that we are judicious, to use Councilwoman Devine's term, judicious about weighing in on pending legislation. And I understand that. It's a slippery slope, and I know that you could easily be spending all your time just commenting on legislation and not dealing with things that are happening here locally. So, I appreciate that, but I think this case is different for 2 reasons. First of all, this is not an ordinary bill. This would commit California to getting fossil fuels off the electric grid entirely before the middle of the century, something no other major state has done. And it's exactly what the leaders in Paris said that we have to do to avoid the most catastrophic consequences of climate change. In fact, what they said was we have to go completely carbon zero. So that would include transportation and agriculture too. But this is still an important step in that direction. If the state of California is not able to make that kind of commitment, it's unlikely that others will. So, I think it's really critical that California set a good example here. Second, I saw in the news press, here I brought it, this was right after you passed the resolution, I saw a quote here, not exactly a quote, I don't know if maybe they misquoted you, because there are no quote marks around here, but I'll read it anyway. It says, Mayor Vartan Garpetian added that Glendale is also working to achieve 100% reliance on renewable energy by 2045 and moving away from the use of fossil fuels. If that's our goal, and I hope it is, it will be a lot easier to get there if we have the state behind us. It's going to be challenging, maybe not to get to a 50% renewable portfolio standard, maybe not even 60, but to get to 100%, that last 40% is going to be pretty difficult with the current technology that we have and with the grid design we have. So it's going to be important that California is there funding technology and supporting grid modernization. And in fact, I just read there was an article today that the state has set aside $44 or $45 million for grants to fund kind of microgrid test sites so that we can, try to get a better sense of how we manage all this distributed energy. So these are the kinds of things that are important. So my point here is that this is not just about, saying something nice that's symbolic. It's something that's going to help us meet our goal. I should also add that several other cities are working on resolutions. I shared with you the resolution from Los Angeles, and that's expected to pass next week, at the end of next week. It would be cool if we could beat them. But anyway, that's my pitch. I'm not going to talk about climate change today, except if you haven't seen the new Al Gore movie, you should.
I think that movie is not doing that well at the theater.
What's that?
I said Al Gore's movie is not doing that well.
Probably not. It's not a blockbuster, but that's not really important to me anyway. I think it's really quite good, and it's disturbing, but it also gives a lot of reason for hope, and we need hope, especially with all the stuff we read about what's going on. So one other final thing. Do I have another few seconds? There was a survey, and the point here is this is not a very controversial thing, although in the assembly sometimes it's difficult because there are a lot of folks that get a lot of money from utilities and oil companies. But there was a survey by the California, last sentence, Public Policy Information Center. They asked, do you support the state's legislative proposal to require 100% energy come from renewable sources in 2045? And there was a yes of 76%, and in LA area it was 79%. So I don't think this is a very controversial thing right now. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. What's next, please? I have no other cards.
That's it. There's nothing else. Motions to adjourn.
Okay. Before we adjourn, I didn't want to say in the beginning of this session because probably everybody will be upset, but however, I will say it now. Sage Motor Group is leaving Glendale. Actually, Trophy Automotive, which is a very big company, bought Nissan and Infiniti. Nissan was selling 300 cars a month, and the average, if we say, is $20,000. The tax which we were collecting was like $60,000, and they sold the Infiniti also, which is average car is $40,000. They sell 100 cars a month, so it will be $40,000. So together they were coming to our treasury $100,000 a month. So we will lose that, because Trophy is removing the Nissan and the Infiniti from here. So maybe you want to look into it and see what we can do. And the problem is that they are selling the land separately. And the other problem is that every franchisee should be 10 miles away from another franchisee in automobile business. And the problem is that I was checking all the different marks and models of, different cars, and I couldn't find even one company that can come and replace it, because we have everything other than Nissan, and apparently where they are moving it will be very close to us, and we can't bring another Nissan. Nobody will come probably here, or whatever will happen is, I think that's a very bad news to lose like
How about Cadillac? How about Cadillac?
Cadillac is not as big as, Cadillac will be part of like Chevy or GMC, which we have. It's not going to be separate dealership. So that's what for the staff maybe to look into, and what we have to do, and what we have to do in the future to support dealership on the brand. So this won't be repeated with another one. Thank you.
Thank you for the great news, Mr. Alexander.
That's why I hold it to the end. I didn't want to upset you from the beginning.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay,
we adjourn. Motion second.